of the Netherlands Institute of Ecology, KNAW, a role she held from 1999 to 2019. She is a member of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Science and internationally recognized for her pioneering research into multi-trophic interactions, knowledge that underpins more sustainable and resilient agro-ecosystems. Louise has dedicated her career to translating ecology science into action. She sees it as her mission to highlight the critical role of ecological knowledge in building a sustainable economy, engaging politicians, business leaders, and society at large. She is a leading advocate for nature-based integrated sustainable principles spanning biodiversity, circularity, and energy systems. These principles are not only reflected in her research and governance work, but also in practice. Under her leadership, the award-winning KNAW laboratory and office complex in Wageningen was realized as a showcase of integrated sustainability, earning the Golden Pyramid Award in 2012 for inspiring commissioning in architecture. And with these words, I will hand over to Louise, who will guide us through today's program. Louise, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Oh my gosh. Thank you for your overly nice words, which are completely unnecessary, because today we're going to have a wonderful event and a very necessary event. You all know that the political situation is not very favorable for nature. We've gone through a rough time and are still going through a very rough time of people not relating to nature, and I think it's going to be very, very important that we show that there is so much possible. There's so many positive things we can do that will really pay off, not only ecologically, but also economically and socially. So today I have the greatest speakers and panel members that can really inspire everybody that is busy or related to this nature restoration resolution, this Dutch strategy that we have to show again, that we're leading the world, which we were close to doing that with our ecological main, the ecologische hoofdstructuur, the ecological main, I don't know what that is in English, but variation in the landscape. But anyway, so I want to just see, we had 135 people that were coming today, and I want to see who is there. So I want you to just get up when I ask you to which category you are. The scientist first. The scientist. Get up or whatever you find easy. Okay, now it's a science for policy meeting. So where's the policy member? The national level first. The national level. Okay, so you guys, you got to do it, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. Provincial level? Provincial level, there, Hagar, there, okay. Now, the municipalities will be less, I think. Oh, still present. The water boards, we have all these governmental layers in the Netherlands. Yeah, also present. Okay, NGOs, always very strong in advising, of course. Consultancies, yes, also very good. Yeah, you have a lot of power. What do you have? Institutes. I don't know what that really is. Yeah, okay, so what? Yeah, okay, business. Very, very good. Okay, so I'm also standing here as the chair of the Delta Plan Biodiversity Recovery. That's a Dutch plan with more than 200 partners that really want to change the system so that nature gets a chance. So that's business, science, it came from science, and so with nature organizations, with the agro-food sector, with the banks, with the retail and everything. And we're pushing them for the transition to a more sustainable system. So today we're going to, and why are we here with EASAC? Well, as a member of EASAC, I realized that, you know, we got to bring them to Amsterdam at the right moment. And at this time, the writing is ongoing. 80% is about ready. 20% still needs to go. And it is today that we're going to fill that 20% with a lot of optimism and positivism. And know that this will be recorded and we can take it to Europe, we can take it to Brussels. We have a meeting this afternoon and we'll see how it can also help other countries, maybe, with our ideas. So that is the idea for today. And now, from the EASAC Environment Steering Panel, we wrote a commentary. We write a lot of very good reports, I think, on regenerative agriculture, on multifunctional use of forests, on soils, look at the publications on our site, also on transformative change, for example. But anyway, it's always a big report with a lot of knowledge from all these academies. But of course, no politician is going to read that, right? So that's why we're also going to make commentaries that are shorter, that are brief, that are very clear for the reader. And so one of those, I think, very well, yeah, I can say it's a very good commentary. But anyway, the one person that was also in the lead, of course, is the director of the ESP, of the Environment Steering Panel. And so I want to start with the commentary, because that's going to be the advice to the European Commission. And of course, it's going to be different for Finland than it is for Greece, but I think now today we're going to focus also on Holland, but on the Netherlands. But I think I want to give you the floor, of course, as the next speaker. So get rid of this one. And Thomas Almqvist, professor at Stockholm University, and the director of the EASAC Environment Steering Panel. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you for organizing this event, and also a big thanks to the Academy, the Dutch Academy, for, I think, this very timely event, where we could discuss the nature restoration regulation when it really matters for Europe. And I think we're going to start up on the optimistic and positive way that this regulation actually represents a lot of opportunities for Europe, and important opportunities. But I could start out with a question, why? Why are we concerned about restoring nature? And I would argue that we have seen the last 100 years a catastrophic loss of natural capital. And you could see this illustrated in this figure where we actually, humans and our domesticated animals, are completely dominating the world. We have lost having about 50% wild animals in marine and terrestrial 100 years ago. It's now about 5% in biomass. So this is a catastrophic loss we actually need to address. It's very urgent that we do address this and try to reverse the trend and restore more of wild animals and wild nature, but also nature that is functioning and deliver ecosystem services to humanity. So there's been a lot of reports the last year on the role biodiversity and nature plays in national security. And here is one report of many pointing out that what we are experiencing now with the loss of natural capital is actually a threat to national security and our capacity to adapt to a future climate. And so these are really serious issues for society to grapple with, and we need to take them very serious. The question we could ask first, what is restoration? Well, it's not a very, very easy question to address, but I want to summarize restoration as that we are restoring vital functions to degraded ecosystems, and there's an emphasis on reviving ecological processes. So grazing, wildfire regimes, flooding regimes. We are restoring processes in nature that are important for maintaining diversity and for maintaining other functions that are important for humans. So the Nature Restoration Regulation, what does it do? I think, and this has, I think, not been really put on the radar, or the member states really thinking deeply about this, but I think it outlines the means for compensating for current market failures, and it particularly aims to address unequal sharing of cost and benefits. So we have the situation where perhaps the cost of restoration is carried by landowners, but the benefits are then coming to the public at large. So we need mechanisms to equalize this and to have more of equity when it comes to sharing costs and benefits. I also think this regulation creates a regulatory overlay to limit the damage to society from actions that destroy or degrade nature. And I think this is really one really important regulatory mechanisms we have in the European Union to address this, the damage to society that actions are causing in destroying and degrading nature. So just to give you an overview of the aims of this regulation, it is to restore nature and actually to generate multiple benefits that relate to health, that relate to climate adaptation, that relate to many other important issues. And the costs we could calculate, and this is costs that have been actually calculated by the Commission, that we could invest 150 billion in restoring nature in Europe, but the benefits that would be generated by that restoration efforts, it's around 1,800 billion euros. Benefits that we need to share among the public. We will talk a lot today, given the country we are in, about water and restoring hydrological systems. So I will just say a few words about also the terrestrial, which is extremely important, and also agriculture in this country is a very important sector, where we have experienced over time a loss of soil, reduced carbon storage capacity, reduced water holding capacity, and loss of biodiversity in our agricultural landscape. And there is an important task for us now to reverse that trend, to restore soil health, to increase carbon storage capacity in the agricultural landscape. That's going to be very important, and improve biodiversity. We did point out in a report that came a couple of years ago on regenerative agriculture that there are, in fact, these win-win-win situations where you could actually invest in maintaining agricultural productivity, and at the same time you will improve carbon storage in soil, and you will also improve biodiversity, and by that also having greater capacity to adapt to future climate change. And there are these examples where you could invest in diversified crop rotations, intercropping, in cover crops, reduced tillage, agroforestry, that all contribute to these three goals of maintaining productivity, storage of carbon, and improving biodiversity. Also, the forests are of concern in Europe, and one particular concern is that we are losing carbon storage capacity in our European forests. And this is something that is very important to address, because a lot of the carbon budget in Europe is actually dependent on storage of carbon in forests. So here, restoration efforts in forests are really, really important. But I want to point out one aspect of the nature restoration regulation, which I think has gone a bit under the radar for many member states, and that is to mainstream preventive restoration, where restoration is actually a tool to reduce disaster risks. And we published recently a report on wildfires where we could show that there are lots of ways you could intervene in forest management to reduce the risk of wildfire. So you could increase the mixed species stands, close to nature forestry, agro-silvo-pastoral systems, restore low flammability mosaics in the landscape, introduce strategic fuel breaks, and restore peatlands. And in fact, we were very pleased to see the Commission announcing this communication to the Parliament on integrated wildfire risk management that just came a bit more than a month ago. And when you read it, you could actually see that they have taken our report on changing wildfires that came out last year really had an impact on this communication. So I just want to congratulate the working group that produced this report, and particularly the co-chairs Osolja Valko and Kathleen Stowe from the Dutch Academy for producing a very successful and influential report that has now a major impact on the future management of landscapes in Europe. But I also want to mention that restoration could also address other issues we have in front of us. And one is, of course, flooding related to climate change, where there are ample of opportunities where we could use restoration efforts to improve natural water retention measures, floodplain reconnection. We might talk about that much later this morning. Restoring riparian buffers, soil health restoration, restoring farm ponds, and also urban sponge measures. Where we shouldn't forget the urban areas. They are really vulnerable in the coming climate, and we should also address the role of nature restoration in addressing urban vulnerabilities. Drought and heat is also another factor that will affect Europe, where restoration also could have very important effects, restoring soil organic matter, restore shaded riparian corridors, and increase urban tree canopies, for example. So in summary, I think member states should view this nature restoration regulation as a fantastic opportunity to find cost-effective ways of addressing some of the very severe challenges we have ahead of us when it comes to climate change, and recognize and finance nature's strategic assets, and valuing measurable public good outcomes, deliver cross-sectoral policy coherence and governance, aligning incentives and institutions, and lastly, mainstream preventive restoration, invest ahead of crisis to secure resilience for fair transition and autonomy. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to this short introduction to the commentary. And I really look forward now to the discussion and questions and we will have about the situation in the Netherlands. I think the rest of Europe has so much to learn from this country and how you are dealing with this. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much. You know, the situation is really quite serious, so you get really depressed if you really look at the data. I often say people feel sorry for farmers, they have to change and all that, but I feel sorry for ecologists that see the data every day for all of my life, right? I've seen lines going down. I've also seen lines going up, and that's why it's so important to talk about that. We have time for one question, I think, from the audience. We have a microphone, 2 microphones, ladies. Who wants to ask a question to Thomas?
This one here.
Of course, there is a lot to follow.
Here,
Here. Just say who you are. That's nice.
Good morning. I'm Jasper, an entrepreneur myself, living around the corner here. I'm a member of the Louise Vet fan club. I have a sign here.
Nature fan club.
Nature fan.
Okay.
Last week I had a documentary scene here around the corner also about indigenous people. How they look, how they live, how they behave, about the environment. about daily life, family life, everything. It's answering a lot of questions, what you're addressing. But why the group was small? There's 20 people watching the documentary. Why and also policymakers, why don't we want to hear these messages?
About the indigenous people? I think it's been very well recognized, both local knowledge and indigenous knowledge, and the role they would play in the future more sustainable use of landscape. So I think that's fairly well established now, but I agree, we could put it even higher on the agenda and make sure that knowledge is actually respected and valued. There is this IPBS are using the multiple evidence base to try to bring together all different knowledge systems we know of, and in a respectful way to actually create insights that will be very important for us to handle the uncertainty of the future. So I think local and indigenous knowledge very well is part of that multiple evidence base we actually need to build our future decision making on.
Thank you. Well, I'm really going to look at this clock all the time. It's really horrible. One more question, if there is any. Otherwise, we're going to continue with our panel. I see a short question.
Why have you not considered ocean biodiversity and restoration?
Oh, that will come next.
It is considered, and we will come back to it this morning. In the commentary, we have a section on oceans as well and coastal areas. I didn't address this now because I was emphasizing more the terrestrial, because then we'll move into the aquatic and ocean aspects.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, so the first session we're going to do is more on terrestrial, let's say. The second on more freshwater, delta, riverine, and the third on marine. So I want to introduce now the panel, and thank you, Thomas, again for the introduction. And so, yes, we're going to have 3 people, sometimes from policy, from doing things, from advising the policy, etc. So I want to invite Leonie Geerts to come up here. She's the national program lead to really make this whole thing possible. So go ahead, sit down. And then Judy Koppenjan, who is a strategic advisor for WWF strategy, and Andrea Almasi, who is really a great person in Brabants Landschap, one of the provinces that shows how well it can be done. Well, welcome, ladies. So we're going to have a discussion, and I first want to start a little bit with you, Leonie. And then I go to Judy and we'll sort of mix. Leonie, I looked at your LinkedIn, of course, and I saw that you have an enormous broad CV as a manager working for different departments of the national government, from youth care, but also in the IT and the Ministry of Defense. Believe it or not, yes. And you even gave a TEDx talk at the Ministry of Defense, saying that happiness was a crucial factor for success. Now, I love that one, right? So we're going to make you happy today, because I think you must lead this whole process. But what do you have with nature? Because I was looking for your, some relationship to nature.
Thanks for your question. And also for inviting me. And I was thinking about my relationship with nature before I started this adventure as the program lead for implementing the NRR. And so before I started, I was actually an outdoor person. I hope all of you are. I enjoyed walking outside, trips in the mountains, etc. But since I've started, I truly engaged with nature. So actually I drive my family crazy because now I want a hedgehog home and bats homes, and I'm doing all kinds of studies on ecology and animals. And so I think that's also part of being part of this program and working on nature, is that you really get enthusiastic and more enthusiastic to contribute to nature on all different aspects. And so that's what really inspires me to do this work.
That's good, and you're an optimistic person, which I noticed. I want to go to Judy, because of course we have all the nature institutions, all nature parties, about 11 of them, and they join together to advise about this.
It is true.
Come up with your great examples.
Yeah, so we as an NGO coalition actually gathered forces on the nature restoration, because we of course really welcome this new law. In the Netherlands we do not succeed in nature restoration. Over the last decennia we've been trying, but it just isn't working for us. So when the restoration law was accepted, we joined forces and really also took a look at the Dutch ecology, Dutch country, to sort of build what we call like a shadow plan, building blocks, what we would like to see within the nature restoration plan. And of course, the Netherlands is a very busy country. We do a lot here. And this is also something that we see in nature. There's a lot of pressure factors in the Netherlands that affect our environment. Of course, we know there is a nitrogen crisis, but I'm also thinking of hydrology. As you can imagine, with the changing climate, we expect the future to even be more impactful on our environment. So this nature restoration law is the opportunity to really address all those pressure factors. So we would hope that within the nature restoration plan, we do not just look at specific measures in areas, but we have a national plan for these pressure factors. And of course, we also need to look at, for example, agriculture in the Netherlands, because that is one of the main drivers for these pressure factors. So I hope Leonie can also elaborate a little bit on what they are doing towards the nature restoration plan, and also looking at specific measures and also regulation that is being done towards these pressure factors.
Yeah, a very good point. We will come back to that, because we're going to give you a lot of things, but also we have 3 sessions, and so I know you're staying and you're gathering it all, right? Okay. So you have 2 roles, not only this one. Okay. So the third person here is Andrea, and now as a chair of the Delta Plan Biodiversity Recovery, we are very much in favor of these diverse landscape elements, the hedges, the water and the areas along the crop sides. So you have been very instrumental in North Brabant, which is very intense agriculture province, still has great successes. One of the people here, Hagar, is also sitting here from the province, who has played a crucial role. But tell me about it. What is the success factor, and what do you want to give to Leonie to say, this must be in your 20% of the plan?
Thank you very much for the invitation. And first of all, I want to apologize for my English. It's been a bit rusty since in the Netherlands and Brabant we talk a lot of Dutch.
Yeah.
But I think a key success factor for implementation is that you have to realize that a lot of measurements of the NRR are on a voluntary basis. So you should not always think about what you demand of farmers, how they need to change, but what you can offer farmers that are willing to take a step forward and really willing to take measurements that are in line with the NRR.
And crucial incentives then.
Crucial incentives, yeah. Yes. And we're very lucky in Brabant. We have a very good scheme, landscape development scheme, stimulation scheme, which offers people want to ponds, hedges, all kind of ecological verbindingszones, connectivity of the landscape when they want to improve it, there you can, the devaluation of the land, you can get subsidy, but also for the plant material. So there's a very good subsidy scheme.
So that's good, because 60% of the Netherlands is agricultural land. Huh? So if we're talking about biodiversity recovery, we cannot talk. We have to talk about agriculture, and so the provinces are, of course, very important in actually the work to put it in place. Finance is coming from the national government to the provinces to do things. What is so successful financially if a farmer is needed for keeping the landscape and to actually build, to plant the landscape elements, to actually keep them in a good state for 20, 30 years? You want to pay them. Is that what you managed to do? How is the financial situation there?
That's also for us still a key question. We see a subsidy is very good, very successful instrument, but it's mainly for private landowners.
Yeah.
If you really want to make large-scale transition, which is necessary to meet the goals of the NRR, then you need more than a subsidy. You have to layer incentives, I think, with things like eco schemes. But if you have to think about what you can offer farmers, I think land is also a crucial factor. Yeah. And 10% of the agricultural land within the Netherlands is state-owned, or is by public authorities. So if you could change the way you lease land, or say every publicly owned should meet the conditions of the NRR for a start, practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach.
Then you have a complete different situation.
Yeah.
And I think layering of incentives is very important. Not only think of a subsidy for a land scheme, but every time a farmer meets a government authority for everything you can imagine, if it's the fiscal aspects or if it's spatial planning, every time when they come to an authority, they should feel they have an advantage or have a better position if they are more nature inclusive.
Absolutely. So we go back to you, Lenny, because if you look at the NRR, then, like you already said, it's very voluntary. There's been a lot of pressure on this law, of course, thanks to the Austrian minister that was very keen on accepting it. The Netherlands voted against it. So did Sweden, Finland, Poland, yeah, whatever. But anyway, we now have a new government. So this whole NRR already started before the previous, or during the previous government. So what's the situation now? And then I want to go to that voluntarily, can we not make very national choices within the CAP, for example, also, that really benefit these farmers that do the work differently? It's not a subsidy, it's payment for work, right? So what's the situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so first of all, I think we are very happy with the new government, and I think it's important to also state that, there are the main department that got money with this new cabinet is the Ministry of Defense, and the second is nature. And obviously it has the connotation of only nitrogen money, but it's not the case. There is a ministerial task force that is specifically focusing on agriculture, nature, and nitrogen. So it has an integrated approach on reducing the pressure factors like nitrogen, but also, I don't know the Dutch name, gewasbescherming.
Pesticides.
Pesticides, thank you. And nature is really a big part of the plans. So what we are doing right now within the ministry is we are actually looking at all the NRR goals, and every part of the task force that's working on zoning zones around Nature 2000 or transitioning agriculture. We have our NRR goals, and we really look at what kind of measures are being taken that maximize the contribution to the NRR goals. So this is really important because we have a package of 20 billion euros and we can really make a change there for the good. And maybe it's not enough. We have to see.
But it's not structural.
Part of it is structural.
Okay.
So part of it is definitely structural. But there are also a lot of voluntary measures. So that definitely has our attention because we all know that it's better to make long-term investments so we can have also perspective for our farmers and fishery, etc. So that it's a transition. I think we have to go through and work on making structural agreements as opposed to temporary subsidies. So we have a chance. I mean, the NRR is really a fantastic opportunity for so many goals, not only
Absolutely.
nature restoration, but it's way bigger than that.
And the nice thing is that, or the nice or not so nice maybe, but that a lot is left to the nations, to the countries itself. So that makes it difficult in the sense that the political situation in each country will have a lot of influence. But since we now have a government that says it can be done, then I think it should be done.
Yeah.
So what we see is that if farmers need to have a different practice of working, even intensified farmers can change with strip cropping. Well, you heard the talk of Thomas. So what are we then going to pick up? Because if I look at the factors, the indicators of farmland biodiversity. So we have the farmland birds, and then there are these three sectors, these three sections: the grassland butterfly index, the organic carbon, cropland and mineral source, so carbon storage, let's say, and organic material in the soil, and the landscape elements, let's say. And then we have to choose at least two of the three. Now, to me, that at least can go away. We have three, right? Okay, some may be more measurable than others, but so that brings me to the level of ambition, right? I had a talk to you. I talked to you beforehand, of course, and you said that you changed the initial report, where everything was being suppressed, pushed away. Nature became a dirty word. It's in the way. We get more mess from Brussels. That we have to, we have the Habitat and Bird Directive. Oh my God, another. So I hope that's really gone. And you said, well, you changed it because you took out sober, the word sober, and you changed it to the word realistic.
Well, actually, I didn't
No,
even changed it.
Okay.
It was our minister who
Okay,
did.
the minister changed it.
Yeah,
Okay, excellent,
on our
excellent.
advice, obviously, but
Okay, well,
he
can you
changed it.
advise the minister then about another
Adding
word?
the word ambitious.
Ambition?
Yeah, we thought about this actually, as a policymaker, obviously. And also my team, we are very ambitious when it comes to the goals and also to meeting the NRR objectives. But we also realize that we have to, it's not our decision in the end, it's a political decision. And I think we are really happy that the part of the government said, we are going to implement the NRR. We are going to do what is necessary, but also we really look at the boundaries, like the financial boundaries and also other economic effects. So we have to take that into account because also what Judy said, we live in a very dense populated country. So we have to meet each other along the way. So,
but you heard Thomas's talk, and if I want to refer back to the World Bank, the economics of nature, that showed that if you invest in nature, our own science report shows it gives you a €1 investment, 4 to 38, if I'm right. But the World Bank already said if you invest in nature, every euro, will invest in nature, you can prevent economic losses of trillions, and then we're talking 12 zeros. Loss of economy, because we're dependent on all these ecosystems, and biodiversity is the basis of a resilient, well-working ecosystem. So you have an incredibly good opportunity to go to the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Economics, right? And because we, at the governmental level, work in silos. So how are you going to gather that, to get sort of that between the ears, that it's also economically, not the bees and the plants and all that. Nobody's really, everybody here loves it, but how can you get these, and the Ministry of Defense? And so I'm curious how. Please keep that ambition up, and how are you going to do that? How do you get these other departments?
Well, it's also a question for us, really. How can we change the dialogue here? How can we make it more about, not only about nature restoration, but also about the financial opportunities and also about security? Because I think that if we look at it from these perspectives, that's also why the advice is so valuable. I think at least what we can do is put it in our management summary to emphasize that even more, and also in our communication about the NRR and the plan, obviously, the nature plan. So that's what we can do, but I also hope that everybody here can also join us in communicating about the benefits of nature restoration.
We see.
I have one idea.
Okay, we'll come later. Did you also mention this economic profit?
Yes, of course. Although I have, of course, to be honest, we as an NGO community are focused on ecological building blocks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I do also would like to respond to the sort of conflict that is being stated as to economy and ecology. I think both things can be, of course, put together. I think the nature restoration law really invites to look to synergies, to the win-win-win situations you were mentioning. In our previous work, we look at building blocks that sort of alter this, and that are really good examples of these synergies. Later this morning, we're talking about rivers and water systems, and there we, of course, have plenty of beautiful examples of where the flooding risk and nature development in the Netherlands are combined, and that also really, really was successful in the Netherlands. That's really something we're known for. The thing I'm a little bit worried about in listening to the sort of economic, how do you call them, conditions for the this is a law that has some really strict deadlines. So the voluntary basis of some of the instruments that are being stated here, they are of course very much necessary to have farmers and other people engaged in this law. But it is also quite a strict deadline for 2030. We need to really make some effort here. So I would like to say that we need a sort of a multiple instruments, of which some are national norms, which is a little bit more strict than just a voluntary instrument base. So I hope that you are also looking at those types of elements.
That's very important to have in place, right? If I go back to you, if you talk about landscape elements, you're also asking the farmer to give up some of his land. That's how he can see it. It will give him or her the benefits of having more biodiversity in the prevention of pests and diseases, for example. And so again, that is functional agrobiodiversity, which is crucial for the farmer itself. But still, in an economic picture, the Netherlands once took, let's say, the decision that where these landscape elements were, it didn't count for payment from Europe. While England did do that differently, in Germany, etc. So it is difficult if you cannot give payment to a farmer for many, many years, payment for work, like when you make a road and you pay a company to make the road and to keep the road in good shape. How did you do that then in Brabant?
In Brabant, I think one of the things we're now working at is looking at public-private funding. Within the subsidy scheme with state aid issues, it's always limited to 6 years. So if you want to give longer financial support for maintaining hedges, for example, up to 20 years, it's easier to make the decision to change your land use. So we're working on that, and we have several contributions already to the fund, and we want to explore how far can we broaden the scope. And the other thing, what I said, I think layer incentives is the most crucial thing. We have a very comprehensive subsidy scheme, but you need more.
Exactly.
Because there's a great movie, actually you start with movies, but you can milk black-tailed codwits. Grutto's kan je niet melken. It's about a farmer who is devoted his life to the grutto.
Beautiful
and
film.
very, very successful. But the economic situation of his farm is so fragile. Yeah. And it's actually a statement of his son who says, well, we need a more secure economic situation for our farm to keep up for the coming 20 years. Yeah. And with a subsidy, you can only give about 85%. So still, and hectares in Holland, land is so expensive. Yeah. If you have to rent it, to lease it, it's sometimes up to 3,600 euros a year. Yeah. Or 15 euros a square meter if you want to buy it. Yeah. If you lose money on your land, it's still expensive. So you have to layer different types of incentives.
Yeah,
to be
so shouldn't we stop using the word subsidy?
No,
maybe
it's not subsidy.
It is payment for work.
Yeah.
Because we need more farmers to keep up our landscape, actually, rather than less farmers, which is happening now. And then we end up with a few very, very, very large farmers. Yeah. But a lot of the smaller farmers are doing exactly the work that we want to do. I think landscape variation is sort of the silver bullet, you know. The more diverse crops, the more diverse land, the more diverse we work with water, etc. So we must pay them. Now, the landscape elements in 2013 by the Vereniging voor Cultuur, Landschap Nederland, they already paid farmers for 20 years, 30 years, I think. And so it was fantastic. All farmers wanted it. Yeah. Even the most intensive farmers said, yeah, great, you know? And so it was also recorded, so in a sense that they were not allowed to take them away again after when they sold their business or something, which was touchy. But on the other hand, I think it worked perfectly. And I think a lot of farmers also would like to have a sort of proudness again. So can you change the word subsidy to?
I can take it with me.
But
well, I think it's
talk to the minister.
Yeah. Well, I love the perspective. I mean, it's all about it. The money doesn't change, but the perspective changes and the dialogue changes. So I think it's a really good advice to change that.
You don't give subsidy to a road company that builds a road,
and then say we pay 85%.
Yeah,
sorry.
perhaps we pay you a couple of years, a couple of kilometers, but then after that we'll see. That's what we do.
I don't think I can change the world.
No, I know.
But we can make a start.
But you know, I'm talking to her, but I mean, there's very influential people in this audience, and I think sometimes it is the language that you use. So use another language. Use also a regional language rather than bees and plants. Use the other incentives more than. So it's an ode to where you came from, identity of it, your landscape, etc., etc. Now okay. Well, questions from the audience. I think is that okay with you, all of you? Yeah. So is there something you have not said, or that you
one
really
last
want to
remark.
say, then do it now.
That's
a good one.
Yeah, there's a very nice report. It is in Dutch, but for the Dutch people here, it's a very good description of what kind of possibilities there are to stimulate.
Yes.
To
All the tools and
all the
instruments are in
tools.
there.
It's a really complete toolbox, much more than paying for
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
subsidy schemes. So there are a lot more tools, and I'm very happy that within Brabant we start to explore how it works in practice. So,
Very, very
yeah.
good. Very good. Okay, we're going to the audience. I can't see anything with this light. I see a question over there in the middle. So,
Yeah, thank you. And I think a question to Andrea and maybe also
and
Leonie.
who are you? Okay.
My name is Jan Dijsselbloem. I'm from IVN Nature Education in the Netherlands. So we're talking about this layering of support and incentives, and I really recognize this. And I also recognize it's probably pretty hard from department view. And maybe if you get closer to communities, it's easier, more or less. So I was looking forward to hearing more about what's the success factor on province level, or maybe also on government level, to layer this stuff and to get nature inclusion also in other policies. Do you see good examples, and what was the success? Is it the stories, the storyline? What makes the win-win really feasible?
Yeah, I think we're very lucky within Brabant. We have a lot of volunteers as well. We have a very active community. So sometimes the maintenance of the landscape elements is done by the community. Also for farmers with the little owl or things like that. They have visitors on their farm, the volunteers, who are so enthusiastic and always looking at the little places where something can be done on their fields. Or so the interaction and the connection is also very important on a lower level. And if you're talking about layering of incentives, I think as a government you can do so much with fees you ask. If you're giving permits, make it more favorable for more nature inclusive farmers. See what you can do by yourself instead of only asking others to change. That's, I think, a lot, very important. So for Brabants Landscape, we once actually bought a plot of land, and then all farmers changed position, and then they bought back the land, but were all more favorable land positions, and they managed to 10% landscape elements. So it's always see what you can do and get the real connection.
That's very good. I don't know if Judy would like to add to that?
I don't think I specifically have something to add there.
Next, other question. I see a question there.
Good morning. My name is Tom Gijs. I work for the Vereniging Nederlands Cultuurlandschap. Thank you for mentioning us.
I didn't know
I'm very honored.
it was in English.
No problem, no problem. So, actually, I just work here for 2 months. And what I notice is that we need... For now, the thought is we need a combination of public and private money, but the problem is it is very difficult to get money from the private sector. And I think it actually doesn't work. If we had a system change with the land consolidation after World War II, so all the landscape elements disappeared. So if we really want the landscape elements back, we need a system that makes scaling up possible again. And I think it's an illusion to think that with individual big companies and public money in combination, we can get that soon enough, because there's no time left. So we need something else. So what's your question?
Yeah.
So here. Well, maybe it was just a point from the heart, but I'm very curious for your reaction.
It could be a good question, like how are we going to get this private money in? I'm not as negative as you are. We have to have public money first, but private money will be there. I know of the biodiversity boosters, big an incentive with different companies that already said that they would like to invest. perhaps it's offsetting or something. But Leonie, do you know anything? Are you going to incorporate it into? Are you counting on private money? I hope not too much, because then it's the public money that we need first, of course.
Yeah, we need everything, I think. But I think the most important thing is that we are really working together with Nature Inclusive, the agenda, the team. So we are really trying to combine the whole. Well, we sometimes call it the carrot and the stick. So we have the law that says you have to live up to the goals, meet the goals. But we also see that really the nature inclusive movement and nature inclusive building and restoration, we see really the contribution of it also to the NRR goals. So we're trying to combine that, and also via this program really looking into private funding and the opportunities there, because there's the network with all these branches, from building to construction to everything. So we really see that there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, and I know of several initiatives that really are working hard on that. So like a marketplace, like, oh, we want to invest, and then which farmers, where's the project? You know, what can we do? And then we're pushing for this commitment to pay these farmers for a long time.
Yeah, and also here it's not only about the benefits for nature.
It's
the whole
thing. That's why I think all the land that is nationally owned by our government should have immediately these, you know, the norms of, and especially for water quality, water retention, drought, carbon storage. I mean, you name it, it would be so wonderful. Plus proud farmers. Yeah, okay. Because I have my lady pointing to me if I'm going over time, so that's why I'm standing here. Here's a question, and there's a question. Well, you're standing there, and you're the next one.
Good morning. My name is Arnold van Vliet, working at Wageningen University. You're talking about the private sector, and I see a lot of enthusiasm or sense of urgency there. Also working with big financial organizations, they really see the urgency, but the reason why they see it is also because of policy and policy rules and regulations. And I think, and this is a plea, and why can't we be much more stringent there as the Dutch government to set the borders to where we can go? Now we depend most on the law. And fortunately, there are some very effective people that are very effective in keeping the government to the law. So see this new law as an opportunity to really look at the whole system. And then I think governments or even companies will move, and all these enthusiasts that are active in society will be motivated and mobilized even more to help society. So this collective, and I saw this at this manifestatie Natuur Inclusief in Brabant, in the Brabanthallen, and that was very enthusiastic, with more than 200 leaders willing to make the next step. But please, government, and now apparently look to you, Leonie.
I know, you're the victim.
And all your colleagues, make sure that all the others can really make a step and leave the past with resistance to nature friendliness and go forward.
A norm would help so much.
No question, but a plea.
I had a question here from her. So.
Hello, my name is Iris Poels. I'm a member of Voedselpark Amsterdam, and I have a question about the last fertile sea clay of Amsterdam. It's 40 hectares, and our municipality decided 25 years ago to destroy this for an industry area. And even now, under the circumstances we have nowadays, they still say we cannot change this decision of 25 years ago because it costs approximately 40 million. How can we, with Voedselpark Amsterdam, we have support of 25,000 people and 5,000 people who do donations, so private money enough. But how can we convince the municipality of Amsterdam that it is important to keep the last fertile sea clay of Amsterdam, and also it's important to realize that the Water Council said it's a very riskful area to build industry area because it's a big chance of flood so because it's 5 meters below sea level. And another important thing is there are 400,000 square meters of distribution halls empty in a circle of 10 kilometers around this area. So can you give me some tips how I can convince the municipality of Amsterdam?
Is there somebody from the municipality in Amsterdam? Oh, no, that's not you, Amber. She says I have 3 minutes left. Okay. All right. Is there somebody from the municipality in Amsterdam or no? Okay. Now, come on, girls.
I think we have all the arguments here. We have the nature arguments, we have the security arguments, and we have the economical arguments. And I also hear you have a lot of support. So I hope, you can make change.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you have a good local embedment of your initiative. So just get out there and let them hear you. We heard you here, and
So to refer to this nature restoration resolution also, that we hope somebody can have influence there. Maybe support from WWF. Anyway, one last question. Oh my God, I have 12 of them. Yeah, that's of course difficult. The most urgent question, stand up. Sorry. Oh, you. Okay, so this is it, democracy. Okay, yeah. A question.
My voice is already...
No, otherwise it's recorded, and if you don't speak in the microphone, it's not being recorded, so...
I'm Kees Koot, and I am from Foundation Waterplant, .nl and AU. But what we want, and we try to do now, is get farmers to make underwater plants in their waters, because all the underwater plants you can eat, they clean the water, the biodiversity goes better, and in the future, when they get paid for it, all the water plants will grow back, because now all the water is nearly empty. And I work 40 years with water plants, and that's why I think this is a really good plan to get the water plants back everywhere.
So what's your question?
What?
What's the question?
Well, I had an idea. I didn't have a question.
I know.
I didn't have a question, but I think you need ideas to solve problems.
Absolutely. And the thing is, diversification of the landscape, diversification of the things that we do with the land and with the water is going to be crucial. So thank you for your remark.
But thing is also, all the water plants are eatable. So
system, no, absolutely.
They can make underwater plants, and you can clean the water, and you can look for new food.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to be very good on the time. Thanks very much, and an applause for these fantastic panel members. Okay, now from now we sort of go to the big system, and then we will go into the water, and then we go into the marine, etc. And so we're now going to have an inspiring YouTube, and then after that there is a coffee break.
This is the Netherlands as we know it. A small country with big challenges. Rising sea levels, loss of biodiversity, and a changing climate. But what will this future look like when we shape it from a nature-based perspective? Welcome to 2120. The Netherlands is a country in which biodiversity prospers. Nature is given free rein and water has space to flow. Climate and energy neutrality are mainstream. Agriculture is sustainable and cities are green. This is what the Netherlands can look like in 100 years according to scientists at Wageningen University and Research. They have sketched the Netherlands of the future, an appealing green country for housing, living, and working. Nature-based solutions are the core of civilization, and the natural system serves as the foundation for our spatial planning. If we develop this vision for 2120, this is what different areas in the country will look like. The seabed, the water, and the surface of the North Sea are used in a sustainable way. Wind farms and floating platforms such as port hubs, solar parks, and hydrogen systems will be established off the coast. Additionally, more food will be produced at sea, such as oysters, mussels, and seaweed. Lower lands are elevated by allowing silting up of polders. With double dikes and sand nourishments, the Netherlands will defend itself against the rising sea level. The clay soils of the Netherlands are very suitable for high-value circular agriculture. In 2120, most of the fertile ground will be used for plant-based food production. A healthy soil, strip cultivation, natural crop protection, and optimal use of waste streams will contribute to healthy food at an honest price. Freshwater reservoirs will store surplus rainwater in the winter for use in the summer. Separating fresh from brackish water will be crucial for the development of separate cultivation and strengthening nature. Wide flood defense landscapes will guarantee flood protection. Double dikes will serve as the defense for the most vulnerable low-lying areas. River discharge is increasing in variation. Providing rivers with even more space ensures a better discharge at higher water levels and provides water storage for dry periods. Marshy zones will counterpressure undesirable streams of water through the dike, store water, and increase biodiversity. Fertile river clay soils provide opportunities for circular agriculture, in which dairy farming, field farming, and fruit cultivation interact in circular systems. In 2120, peat marshes in the West will store carbon and create valuable natural environments. Wet cultivation will provide for natural products, biomass, fibers, isolation and construction material, potting soil, medicine, animal food, meat, and cheese. Under all circumstances, infrastructure at higher areas will provide space for new types of mobility. Inhabitants of Northwest Europe eat less meat, which is why less livestock is needed. In the next decades, water management of higher sandy soils is redesigned to retain and store more water. This will increase the replenishment of groundwater. The natural flow of streams have been restored. Agriculture is nature inclusive and climate proof with drought-resistant crops, agroforestry, and food forests. Cities are developed on higher sandy soils to anticipate on rising sea level. Forests are doubled to store carbon and provide sustainable material for construction. In 100 years, Dutch cities are green. Parks and other public green spaces make cities more climate resistant. This is important for cooling and the sponge capacity of cities to manage rainwater. In city centers, cars are replaced by sustainable transportation. Constructions are built with wood, so even buildings become carbon storages. Green rooftops and facades appear everywhere. This will make cities appealing places to live. Our vision of 2120 shows that the Netherlands does not need to surrender to the sea, but that it is possible to create a sustainable and green future. This nature-based approach can be applied to any country or region. Use this principle to develop your own vision of the future and show that climate and biodiversity approaches offer enormous opportunities. imagine what the world could look like if we start shaping it from a nature-based perspective today. Do you want to know more about the Netherlands in 2120 and read about our worldwide nature-based solutions? Please visit wur.eu/Netherlands 2120.
So this is going to be a nice intro to our next speaker, but first we're going to have coffee. And I want to urge you to be back in time, and we're going to start at 10:40. Yeah? Okay. Okay, it's my great pleasure to continue. Lots of exciting things to do. And you saw the video about 2120. And one person that is very instrumental has been in producing all this. I think 6 years ago, if I'm right, is Tim van Hattem, our next speaker. But he's also the author of Only Planet, and that's a book that I can really recommend. Although it was written, also from a climate point of view, biodiversity has a tremendous, importance in there. And it's now being translated, I saw. Yes, okay. So I'm going to introduce Tim van Hattem. And I always have to look at how you introduce people. It's very important. But he's the program leader of the Green Climate Solutions at Wageningen Environmental Research. And what else did I forget? Otherwise, you have to add to it. But so he has this big vision that I really want to hear. And so the floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. My most important job is that I'm a father of 2 kids. I have to apologize first because I have a little bit sleepy eyes. Because yesterday we celebrated Liberty Day. I live in Wageningen. And my kids came home late at night. And one of them, my daughter, lost her passport. So it was a big stress. But anyhow, these are small problems, and let's face the big problems. I would like to take you a little bit to the future, to a vision for the future of the Netherlands, because, as you all know, we are facing some big issues. And I would love to zoom out a little bit. And I think there's no better picture to zoom out than this beautiful picture we all saw it, I think, 3 weeks ago. And these kind of pictures make us aware of the fact that we are absolutely very vulnerable for everything. And we see climate change, biodiversity loss, sustainability fading away from the political agenda, which is, I think, crazy. And the day after Donald Trump was re-elected, I received an email by Al Gore. I'm part of his Climate Reality Leadership Corps. And in that email was a beautiful quote. And it says, fly. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving. And actually his message was, keep going, keep up doing the good work, don't give up. And I think we should not forget that. Well, you can zoom out. If you zoom in, I think this is the best picture ever made. This is the world today, and the world is on fire. We are very busy with solving short-term problems. We are still playing a round of golf. But of course, we all know here that climate change and biodiversity loss are the biggest challenges for the 21st century. 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries already have been crossed. And this study was in the news saying, well, the planet is extremely sick, but not incurable was the side note. And that should have been the headline, I think. And crazy enough, we know that with ambitious climate and biodiversity or nature policy, we can fix this problem and bring the world back into the planetary boundaries. And, well, this decade was supposed to be the decade of action, but it actually became the decade of missed opportunities. We could have done a lot. We have the solutions, we have the financial means, we have the knowledge. But what is missing is that we are not doing enough, and we are moving towards code red. And we all know these kind of pictures. Climate change is already there. This was Valencia 1.5 years ago. I think 700 millimeters of rain in one day. Billions of damage, 200 people died. And this is climate change in action. And we have to start preparing for these kind of events. And we all know that. And I don't know if you've seen this, this report from the European Scientific Advisory Board on Climate Change that also exists. With a very clear message that we have to start adapting to an at least 3 degree warmer world. And that's quite a message. And they said Europe has to start, well, adapting to extreme weather events. And incremental adaptation is not enough. We have to start moving towards transformational adaptation. And, well, that means something. That means really a system change. And we talk a lot about climate change. We talk far less, but here today we do, about the other crisis, biodiversity loss. We know that biodiversity is declining all over the place, also in Europe, also in the Netherlands, big time. And we're also starting to learn that our economy, our society is totally dependent on nature. And crazy enough, we spend 35 times as much money to destroy nature than we do than we spend money on nature restoration. A lot of alarming news so far, and I think this makes us all feel a little bit like this girl. We are scared. We feel paralyzed. We don't believe that we can fix it anymore. And, well, we also know that 80 to 85% of the world population is extremely worried about climate change and biodiversity loss. So a lot of people, they really want to do something, but, well, we all feel a little bit not empowered to do so. So we need to change. And we're all following somewhere this beautiful change curve. I think a lot of people are still in shock. We have still people that are in denial. A lot of people are angry. We are discussing about what kind of solutions we need to take or who needs to do what. A lot of people are depressed, angry, but depressed, scared. But what we need is a perspective, a future that we can create, a future that we can develop. And we need a vision for the future we want, and also the pathways how to get there. And I think in this decade, we have to focus on the right part of this change curve. We need stories of hope, stories of action to empower people to start doing something. And therefore, we need to change the narrative. And I think the most important thing, and I read your beautiful commentary, really important, but we talk a lot about facts and figures, and we have to start talking and touching people in the heart. So we need another way of storytelling. And, well, this is Notre Dame. I was in Paris 2 weeks ago. A beautiful cathedral, and we need cathedral thinking. We need the power of imagination. In the past, we used that to build fantastic things, to build beautiful things. And in this time, we really need the power of imagination to start going in the right direction. And an essential part of that new narrative, of that storytelling, is that climate change and biodiversity loss are not two separate problems. They are very much interconnected, and we need an integrated approach. And that's also saying this picture on the right, made in Stockholm, by the way. I had the wedding cake actually saying that we talk a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals, but the Sustainable Development Goals that are connected to the biosphere, life on land, life in water, the availability of water, and climate change adaptation and mitigation. If we don't focus on these Sustainable Development Goals first, then we never reach the others. And actually this picture is saying like we are part of nature. We need nature. So nature is an essential part of the solution. Our soils, our water systems, our wetlands, our forests are an essential part of the solution and an essential part to create the future we want. Well, we live in a beautiful country, and we are one of the richest countries in the world. The Netherlands is also, the Dutch people are also among the most happiest people in the world. Well, you wouldn't say that if you hear all the complaints all over the place. But we are also extremely vulnerable for the impact of climate change. We are a low-lying delta country. Sea level rise, floods, droughts, heat waves will have huge impact on our country. And what we need is a long-term vision of how we can develop and redesign our country to make it future-proof. And without a long-term vision, we are running from one crisis into the other. We have a nitrogen crisis, we have a housing crisis, we see the climate extremes already all over the place. And we are, in the next decades, will spend 900 billion euros in housing, the energy transition, transition in agriculture. So we really need a long-term vision of how we will redesign our country. And if we talk about a long-term vision for the Netherlands and the future vision, we mainly show these kind of pictures. Our country will be flooded and will be gone. And I don't believe that. We really need another narrative. So with a group of 20 researchers, one of them is in the room, we started thinking about how would the Netherlands look like, how would cathedral thinking for the Netherlands look like if we take the Netherlands, if we take nature-based solutions as a starting point. And we actually said we need new guiding principles for our country. Because our country is not designed for the new climate. It's designed for, based on after the World War II ideas. But we have to really need to start thinking about how we will redesign our country and make it future-proof. And we said a healthy natural system is the foundation for everything we do in our country. We also said water is our most precious resource. So our country is designed to get rid of the water as soon as possible. And we have to start retaining the water, store it, and only drain it to the sea when we don't need it anymore. We also need adaptive spatial planning because we have to keep space for future climate extremes. We don't know exactly what climate change will mean in the future, so we need to keep space in our country to be resilient for these big climate extremes. We want to move towards a nature-positive society where by everything we do, we restore nature instead of break it down. And we said we want a circular and climate-positive economy. And based on these 5 guiding principles, we started thinking about how would our country look like if we would redesign our country, and how would it look like in the next 100 years. And the end result was this beautiful picture. Is there somebody who has never seen this picture before? Well, still a few. Sometimes I am in a room, but everybody raises his hand. So luckily, everybody has seen it. So we created this beautiful map. I think if you want to go somewhere and you don't know exactly where to go, you need a map. So you have some guiding and a direction where you can go. And this map is actually, presenting a very big story about the future of the Netherlands. More energy at sea, food production at sea. We let the coast grow with sea level rise. We will discuss that later. Much more space for water, regenerative agriculture, landscapes as sponges, much more forest, restored wetlands, and green and healthy cities. It's all on that map. It's a big story, and it's all possible. But because everything that is on that map we already have done somewhere, but we need to scale these kind of fantastic pilot projects into mainstream. And to make it a little bit more understandable for people, we made these artist impressions. We need, of course, much more nature with rewilding corridors in biodiverse landscapes. Landscapes as sponges. The wolf is there. Much more space for water. Regenerative and circular agriculture. Green and healthy cities on the higher grounds, but adaptive urban development in the flood-prone areas. We still want to build 80% of the houses we want to build are in flood-prone areas. So we have to think, how do we do that in a smart way? And of course, we need an economy that is much more in harmony with nature, and that is very much important to do so, to make it happen. In a nutshell, the story of the Netherlands in 2120, and well, we presented that already 6 years ago. It was in all the newspapers, except for the Telegraaf. Side note. We were invited all over the place to talk about this vision. And the most important lesson we have learned is that there is a huge need for a hopeful, a realistic, fact-based future perspective. And I think this was an experiment. It was some kind of storytelling, but it worked really well. And it's already 6 years old, and we are keep being invited to talk about this vision all over the place with everybody. This was at the VNG Congress with 3,000 politicians in the room. They're still talking about it, I heard. So that is really interesting. And our key message was that if there's one country in the world that has the knowledge and the financial means to show how a low-lying delta can become future-proof, where you can still produce food, where you can still have much space for nature and water, where you can still earn money and have a good living and become healthy and happy, then it is the Netherlands. The Netherlands could be a fantastic living lab to do so. And with that message, we went to the Groeifonds and discussed with a lot of people how we could move towards this better future. Do I already have to stop, or?
Yeah, well, just go. I love it, but
okay.
Okay.
I will go very quickly. What we did, because the question was asked, why only the Netherlands? Should we not do this for every country in the world? And of course, we think so. So a few years ago, we also developed a future vision for Europe in 2120, showing how Europe could look like in 2120 as a first sketch, because I think we have to do that with all kinds of institutes all over Europe to start doing the same thing and start doing that in all countries. And our call to action was to do that to inspire other regions also to start doing the same exercise, because we really believe that there is a strong need in future visions. And the most important thing is that we have to start co-creating on regional scale to make it happen, that we need much more evidence base about the importance of nature-based solutions, and the cost and benefits, as was already discussed, are not at the same place, but we really need much more information and evidence base about why nature-based solutions are such a good way to go. And we have to translate that into long-term policies and investments, so also to unlock private investors to start investing in nature-based solutions. This is my last slide. And I think the Nature Restoration Regulation and NL 2120 really can help each other. There are a lot of synergies between those two, because, well, there's strong policy to start investing in nature restoration. But what we also need is an inspiring vision and the storytelling of NL 2120. And these two can really help each other to scale and accelerate scaling of nature-based solutions, to unlock this private and public finance, but also to create public awareness and political awareness for the importance of nature, because nature is not a nice to have, but a must have. And I asked AI to make the cover of the nature restoration, the Dutch nature restoration plan. And it came up with this. So with this, I would like to stop, because I talked too long. Thank you.
Thank you. you see, it's well embedded in AI already. That means that you have a lot out there that they can harvest from. Thanks a lot. Yeah, this is very important, that we do see already a lot of bottom-up initiatives. But it has to match with this top-down, rules, regulations, and policy. And if it doesn't, then it never happens. Yeah. So thanks very much. One question from the audience. Here. One of the EASAC members from Norway.
So Lars Smedsrud, professor from Bergen. I was very interested in your map and the ocean part of it. So it looked like you had a lot of creative solutions. So how the Netherlands can use the shallow banks and produce solar power perhaps, and hydrogen, and also maybe grow food in the ocean. Could you just give us a few more details about the ocean part of your vision?
Yeah. So we hear much more later about about ideas for the coastal protection. But what we, for instance, said is like, we're already investing a lot in wind energy at sea. Yeah. So, but we also have to prevent that the North Sea will become an industrial park. So that's a challenge. But we said, wind energy at sea, floating solar parks, but also hydrogen hubs in the foundations of the old oil industry installations there. We also said we need much more space for nature, so a nature reserve at sea. So we defined that, and we said we let the coast grow with sea level rise. So much more sand for the coast, broader dunes. But I think Brechtje will talk much more about that. So lots of ideas on how we can move forward there.
The sand motor, you may know.
The sand engine, yeah.
If you look up the sand motor, then you see how we let nature do the work to create the new coastline, indeed. So oh my goodness, it's difficult to choose. Now, okay, Michiel, okay. There will be opportunity after the panel. There. Be brief.
Michiel Kortels is my name. I'm a philosophy professor and a crop farmer. What I miss, in fact, in these stories is it's all about agriculture, and agriculture should change also. You're talking about seaweed as food, but what about consumers? They have to do something else than what it's doing now. They have to change their diet.
Absolutely.
And so in what way does that play a role in your program?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It plays a very important role. I only had 15 minutes, and I think I took 18. But if I would have had longer, then I would have told that. But of course, we said, we have to move towards that planetary health diet in the whole of Europe. And there's a very interesting study being done by a colleague of mine, Hanne van Zanten. She calculated what if the whole of Europe would move towards this planetary health diet, and then we can produce food for all European citizens with half of the agricultural land. And that's better for our health, it's better for the planet, and it creates huge space for these kind of visions. And I think that is a very important message, because that's really, that would be a game changer. But of course, changing our food, our diet is like also a cultural thing, and it's very sensitive. But this is an essential part of this message and of this story.
No, sorry. Because we don't hear you on film when you don't have the microphone. Okay, I'm going to stop here because we have a new panel coming up. Thank you a lot, Tim, for your attention. Again, I realize there's so many women on these panels. It's really, I didn't notice. I think women change the world anyway, so anyway. Okay, I'm going to ask Kirsten Haaraerts. She's the head of the national program. Actually, I have a different order here a little bit. Head of the Netherlands program of WWF, and a very good political. You're very much related to everything that goes on into government, etc. A beautiful source of information in the board also of the Delta Plan, biodiversity recovery. Anyway, and I'm going to have Els Otterman, who is actually the water board member of the Hoogheemraadschap, the Stichtse Rijnlanden. She's one of the water board members. For all the foreigners, we have provinces and municipals and national, but we have the water boards that really deal with all the water. So thanks for being in that. And then an EASAC member, Fiona. Where's Fiona? There's Fiona. Fiona Regan, she's co-chair of the EASAC Environmental Steering Panel, and she's full professor in chemistry, Dublin City University. Yeah? Okay. Well, that's another opportunity to go here into a little bit more detail. And I want to start with you, actually, because we haven't even mentioned it so much yet, not by Tim, but we have this fantastic idea of rivers, that you can do all these things with these rivers, because we're sort of at the end of all the rivers coming from Europe, so go to the Netherlands, so we have the nice and the not so nice things about those rivers. But tell me about what WWF, together with, the government, has really done in the Netherlands with room for the river, room for the living river.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question, because it's especially not only an effort of WWF, of course, but I think that the main characteristics of room for the river is that we saw quite early on that floodwater protection because of rivers and the low-lying delta we are, gives us the very urgent need to combine functions. So we have, of course, as WWF, a desire to bend the curve of biodiversity loss and help nature, provide a boost for nature restoration. But on the other hand, we also have urgent challenges regarding floodwater protection, for instance, but also silting of grounds and areas and agricultural lands, and all kinds of challenges. And what we see today, but also saw in the past, is that you can combine those functions quite well. And that's not only nice for nature, but nature as your ally is beneficial for all kinds of challenges we stand for. And that is not only envisioned from an ecological perspective, but also economically for the well-being, for happy and healthy surroundings, for people, recreational purposes, and all kinds of functions that your surroundings can serve to you. So that is something we as WWF, together with a lot of partners, want to envision and voice out to the world, because we see that as a solution path that can be applicable at in much more areas than at the rivers alone. We have seen it in the south of Limburg after the floodings. We have seen it along the large rivers of Rhine and Meuse. But we also see it how the city of Rotterdam and Dordrecht are protected by the Biesbos, our marsh area. So there's a lot of examples on how this could work.
Yeah, and you mentioned now the example of Limburg. I also find that striking. We had space for the river already there, and we had the big floods, but we had no loss of people. Yes, there was a lot of damage, but if you compared it to Germany, where there are a lot of death, you can see, and nobody ever mentioned that, but it was because we had invested in, the right way of making space for the river, and therefore was this sort of positive result. It's very difficult for the people living there and having a lot of damage, but there were no casualties, and I thought that was very important.
We even see that the potential for that is even much bigger. So we are now currently investing millions in the south of Limburg, again, for nature-based solutions, because we see if you want to be ready for future challenges relating to climate, that you need to really transform not only our own domestic area, but also the areas abroad being part of the bigger water system. But there's a lot of potential for nature-based solutions there.
Okay, so the ambition must be very high. Yeah?
Yeah,
I know you want to say something about that.
Yeah, the ambition must be very high, but the challenges we face are very high, big as well. So they are correlated quite closely.
So their investment of €1 is incredible. Now, I'm going to you. And Els, you're at the water board. Now, the water boards play a huge role in the Netherlands also, of course. Yeah, you know, everything that has to do with water, water boards have something to say about it, work on it. So when I talked to you also, you said something like, and I want to ask you for an example of that as well, that sometimes, you know, it can be that you do less and you see a good result. We talked about that. Give me that example.
Yes, I can.
About cost effectiveness, eh? Like we said, oh yeah, but everything costs money. And then you said something.
Yes, well, thank you. Kirsten was talking about all the developments that we have to do for flood protection in the Netherlands. But there's also, we maintain a lot of nature and dikes, flood prevention in the Netherlands. And if we do that in an ecologically sound way, then it also helps the biodiversity in the Netherlands. And well, we discussed when we were pre-discussing this panel that in about 10 years ago, that was before I became a board member, we had budget cuts. We needed budget cuts. And so we cut on the maintenance of riparian areas of the rivers and the streams. So we did less mowing, and it actually turned out really well. So a lot of the budget cuts, of course, the years after were restored, but this was maintained because it had a huge effect on biodiversity. So. Yeah. So and also the maintenance of our levees, our dikes. It can be done in a more ecological way without spending a lot more money.
Exactly. It's interesting to see there is now a vision of biodiversity from the Union of Water Boards. So that vision is, how can we use biodiversity also to reach our strategic goals? So, but does it trickle down on the man in the tractor that does the mowing on the dike? That's sometimes the question.
Well, it's a challenge. In the water boards, it's also a politically elected board, and it's also not very favorable for nature at the moment. So when I try to focus on nature restoration, I always try to focus on what's in it for us, for our main tasks that we have to do. Well, it was already mentioned in the previous talks. Climate adaptation in cities is also very helpful if you focus it on greening the cities. We have a task to improve the water quality, which is also, of course, directly related to biodiversity. So there's a lot of things that we can gain from biodiversity improvement in our main tasks as regional water boards.
Absolutely, and for the foreigners, we are at the absolute bottom for the water framework directive and the quality of our water in Europe. The lowest country, more or less. So
what I wanted to also stress on is in history, the water boards were very much technically oriented. So that's a challenge. People are focusing on we build another levee, or we do technical solutions, and it needs a culture change also to trust in more nature-based solutions.
Absolutely. I'm going to you, Fiona. You're from Ireland, and to us, Ireland is green, and your butter is wonderful, and blah, blah, blah. And when I was there, I realized it wasn't so much heaven in many ways. Can you tell us about Ireland and maybe what we can learn from Ireland, and also what you mentioned in, your concerns that, again, Leonie, if we want something in those strategies, what needs to be really in there?
Oh dear, we do have good butter, for sure, and it is green. but it's green, I suppose, because of policy. We have, over the past 2 decades, I suppose, focused on a policy that has driven our protein production from agriculture, food-wise and food harvest 2020 and 2025. And so that incentivized farmers who already are nature carers. You know, to give farmers their due, they really have historically looked after nature. However, policy plays a really important role in how that changes, and it has done in Ireland. And so that drive for increasing protein production by 50% meant increasing dairy farming. And also then increasing beef production intensification led to where we have beautiful green fields, because it's grass-fed beef, the best you'll get. But as a result, our water quality, 48%, I think, according to the most recent EPA report, 48% of our water bodies, surface water bodies, have decreased because of nutrient and nitrogen pollution. So policy really is at odds. Agricultural policy is at odds with environmental policy in Ireland, unfortunately. And, you know, we have a really strong environmental willingness, drive, and strong policy. Enforcement is a challenge because the agricultural policy related to food production is so strong, and it has such a strong economic base in Ireland. And so there lies the green fields, but the real environmental challenge. And there lies our real environmental challenge in terms of the nature conservation, nature restoration law. So yes, you know, I think we can learn an awful lot from what we've heard, the vision with the beautiful video and the description just before. We need a vision that involves the positivity of the commentary, the opportunity that lies within nature restoration. And we see some great examples, I think I spoke to you briefly about them, around communities. Communities are driving change in Ireland.
The bottom up.
Bottom up, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we're at a moment in Ireland, as I'm sure it's the same here, where communities are really driving change in terms of working with farmers. There's a lovely example of a small area in County Clare in the west of Ireland, Ina, where the community came together to work with farmers. They applied for funding to encourage farmers to bring the riparian zones farther back from the rivers, where cattle normally would have entered the rivers. And then they bought pumps to pump water to the cattle, but it meant that the water quality was improving. And this was driven by communities. And that's one example of many, many examples where communities are really driving change in Ireland. So hopefully I've answered your question. But yeah, it's serious in terms of water pollution, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the changes that we want to establish through this nature restoration resolution, what, in your opinion, actually, question could be to all of you, is the major barrier then? Yeah, the same question I could ask Tim. Like, yeah, you've been talking about it for 6 years. What is the major barrier that we just don't get it done? Is it whatever?
Can I answer to
sure,
that?
Go ahead.
One of the main barriers I see is that we still have difficulties in diverging between the short term and the longer term. So we have the vision, we have the knowledge on what is needed, and we have the knowledge and the scientific basis on the urgency. So all things are clear on that, but we lack courage to diverge from the shorter term towards the longer term. And you see that also the scientific basis is that stating that if you put your eyes on that longer term, you see that it is more cost effective, more easygoing, in all kinds of ways more efficient if you choose for nature restoration. But we find it difficult to say that out loud. And then we applaud incremental small steps, which is, of course, ridiculous because we have a bigger picture and we need to backcast from that to today. And that is something that we lack the courage, and we as a whole of society, I think, not only the scientific world, but also the NGOs, we are now very happy with every little step. And we also know that's just not enough. So I think it's an obligation to all of us to also say that out loud. It's not sufficient. And we know that. So we need to act accordingly. And that is a message that must come across more and more, because all the other ingredients and building blocks are already there.
Yeah, it is upscalable, but there is no willingness or in our economic system. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm drawn to something you said earlier with your other panel. It's about paying for the work that's being done. Incentivization has happened in Ireland with farming, where they were paid to not so much replace hedgerows, but put in bird boxes. I mean, we need to really think about the reality and the advice that we're giving farmers. You know, it needs to be advice that actually meets the requirements of the new regulations, whether it be water or conservation. And so paying them to do the right thing is really important. Farmers want to do the right thing. But it's difficult if they've already invested in technology to transform to being a very good dairy producer, for then to turn around and say, well, actually, we now want you to mind your land and leave space for floodwater. I mean, this is not fair.
Yeah.
We need to be paying them properly to do the right thing if this is what we want, I believe.
I totally agree with the two that are already mentioned, but it gives me the opportunity to add a third, which is, I think, the integrated approach. There's a lot of work needs to be done on flood protection, but also the energy congestion. If we only focus on that as a
silo,
then we miss opportunities. So if we integrate it, there's this big successful example of a Room for the River in the Netherlands, where the quality of landscape was combined with flood protection. And everybody sees that as a positive example, but it was because of it had two purposes.
Yeah.
So we need to integrate it in all our policies and all our goals that we have. And if Leonie, if I can give her one example, so please try to integrate it to the goals of the other departments, and otherwise it will never fly.
I fully agree with all three of you, bringing me to how our national government is actually organized. So where we have the silos, but everybody has his own agenda and its own budget, and then you're asking them to do this collaboration. That is one of the challenges, and that's why I'm really glad with Leonie, because she has done a lot of that kind of stuff in her previous jobs as well. You know, it's very heavy on your shoulders. No, but serious. And so there's no integrated money either, if you say so. There is not money for only as an experiment. And then that ends again.
I don't know. There's a lot of good examples
for
in
the Delta Werken, for the coast protection.
Yeah, but I think for Room for the River kind projects are still being carried out.
Okay,
so
all right.
my first boss said, for a good project, there's always money, and I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I also we have this special bank for the water boards, the Nederlandse Waterschapsbank, and if they collect money for green funds, then it is over. A lot of people want to invest in it. So I think there's lots of opportunities, but it is difficult, of course, to put it all together. But it can be done, I'm sure.
But use that example of indeed Space for the River, because I think it is unique, and it's also something that really people find it very interesting in other countries. Oh, you do that. Well, why don't we do that? So I think that's a very good example. When we talked else, you also said something. We need to make more choices. You said at some point. Governments obviously there is the carrot and the stick. Let's say. Is that what you meant with that? You have norms that need to be made. That there has to be less voluntarily but strict. We talked about it before.
I think it's all about space, and we are also preparing in the Netherlands this the spatial planning national policy, And what we see there also from our water perspective is that there's no choices being made. Everything is, the purpose is still on doing everything, but we need space for water, we need space for nature. And it can be done if we do it in another way, like Tim showed us. Yeah. But we have to make those choices, otherwise the innovations will also not come up. If we set out the horizon, we will find solutions for innovative methods to combine these things.
Absolutely. What is the next step? Let's say if you talk about space for the river, space for the living river. Unfortunately, I have to admit that Koverdas later on will not be able to come because he's ill. Because I wanted to ask him also, of course. It's always the safety that is first, and the economy. Can the boats, still go there if the water goes down in the river? Blah blah. What is the next step? I find it maybe interesting to talk about integrality when you talk about sand and that comes out of the river with the companies that do that. Oh my God, the delfstofverwinning. Yeah, I'm looking for. Yeah, mining. Do you see positive collaborations there? Yeah. Those are big companies, that they want the sand and they want to have everything scoop out of the rivers.
And I see a lot of potential there. But overall, I do see a lot of potential of cooperation between public and private, because if indeed the rules and the perspective is clear, then we see that there's very much many businesses also in the Netherlands that have good ideas and go forward with it. But they also depend on getting clear guidance from, for instance, a government. What I also see is that, indeed, like Elle said, that we need to make a choice that we stop working in the silos we have currently. So, for instance, on water policy in the Netherlands, we have the obligation by law to implement our water policy against floodwater protection sober and efficient. But then the discussion comes in, what is sober and what is efficient? From whose perspective does it count? So if you could redefine those KPIs for our policy and mark efficient as something that should be efficient from a broader welfare perspective, like nature, like well-being, like economic prosperity and all kinds of stuff, then you get other conversations, and then you get other programs, and then you can have the possibility of having large programs for floodwater protection, recreating dikes and being sustainable for future challenges while incorporating other functions and mechanisms. And I think that that's the way forward. And that is something that can go for water policy, but indeed is, I think, valid for all kinds of policies. So make sure that policy needs to function for other cares and services it should deliver to society as a whole.
Absolutely, I fully agree. I'm going to the public and ask for the questions, otherwise we don't have a lot of time for that. So, questions for there's the first one.
My name is Daan Rijt. I'm from the construction company Heijmans, so the private sector. What I'm really curious about, it's super easy to say to you guys what you need to do in terms of policy and government and what needs to happen to enable this change. But what can we do as a private sector to actually help you guys also make that policy a reality? I think that's a better way to think about it. What can we do instead of like always you guys?
Who wants to answer?
Well, I can give an answer. Well, you as a company work on one of our levies, strengthening our levies. And I think, my regional water authority is quite nature-oriented, but not all of the water authorities are. So please bring in your ideas of how you can strengthen a dike in a nature-based way, or how you can make small steps. Bloemrijke dijken, flowers on the. If you give suggestions how you can do it in an economically sober and doelmatige way, it helps. Because you sometimes have to force the techno orientation of all the people that are working on strengthening levees.
You speak a different language, which is very important language also for policymakers, obviously. Yeah, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just very excited to hear somebody from the private sector asking that question, because that's a disruptive comment. That's what we need. I think we actually, for success to happen here in terms of nature restoration, we need private sector to really drive the change. It's very difficult for policy to work if the private sector isn't aligned. I'm not talking about funding, I'm talking about really how your thinking aligns. So I think this is a disruptive comment here. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's really nice. And I know you're participating in the collective Nature Inclusive. We'll have that in the last session as well. Or you're a member of the Delta Plan Biodiversity Recovery also. So because that's exactly what we're trying to get. It's the stick and it's the carrot. I love the carrot, but the stick is needed too. I see a lot of questions over there. Marcel, there.
Yeah, thank you. Els, you mentioned that we need to make choices, and I think that's one of the most important words. And well, Louise also alluded to language. Making choices is one thing, but the word that I hear not so much is that we need to reduce things. And you said if we make choices to give more space for water, more space for nature, we need to do things. And Tim had this vision, but although I love Tim's perspective, I think one of the easy solutions there was, okay, we need to make choices, we need more water, we need to make more nature, so we get the food and we get the energy from the sea. I'm pretty sure that in the next session we'll hear what the consequences of that are. And we now have an energy transition because of Ukraine, because of the Iran war. And what do? Well, now we need to change to other sources of energy. But I never hear that we need to reduce energy use. And I think that's one of the most important things, but it's not so popular with the public because we don't want to grow, to reduce, because we live in an economy of growth. And in that sense, I loved that Tim had in one of his slides one section of the donut economy, because that's an important message telling, well, we live in this economy of the 19th century and not in the economy of the 21st century.
What's your question, Marcel?
Well, why don't we put the word less, and we do less?
People hate this.
That's what people hate, but I think that's the crux of making the changes.
Yeah, very good point.
Well, I think we focus on that, and in my world, we're also focusing on using less drinking water, for example, and using less water for irrigation and things like that. And I also, if you talk about space, then you can also combine functions. Yep. 2 weeks ago, we handed a petition to the Parliament for floating housing. There's a huge opportunity in the Netherlands for floating housing, so you can combine living and water at the same time, and you can also make underwater reefs under these. So it's also good. It can also be done with maintaining good water quality. So we also have to focus on that. But indeed, we also have to talk about reduction of use of chemicals and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Another question. There you go. And it won't be long.
I'm Cobina, I work for National Park de Biesbos. So I was wondering, how could national parks help?
We have a new national park now. Yeah. Okay. Who to? Which person do you want to ask? Or who wants to answer?
Yeah. Well, I think that having the concept of national parks is very valuable. I know that we have contested it largely in the Netherlands because we also said, well, national park is not like you envision, for instance, in the United States with all the money you need and the protection and whatever. But in the end, I started off as a student forest and nature conservation. So I really believe what Jan is there of EPN also stated, that the love for nature also starts with being in nature. And I think that national parks have an incredible important function in that, being the go-to place for many people to experience nature and be part of it. So that is, of course, I think the main function. But the characteristic of national parks is also, of course, that it is a place where not only nature thrives, but also other things can happen. Tourism, recreation, people living there, working there. They're bigger areas, and they showcase how the combination can function and work. So that is something I would be really proud of.
Yeah. The last question. You already had it over there. Oh, here. Lodewijk. Okay, sorry.
So a really interesting conversation. I'm Lodewijk Hoekstra, ambassador of Dutch water authorities, but also founder of the Green Label Institute, making sustainable measurable. And I really embrace the importance of integral solution and stacking solutions with little space. But at the end, I think, I didn't hear the word, but it's all about resilience in a broader sense. So I was curious about your vision to this.
So you mean
Well,
that
the word
resilience should be the goal?
Well, yeah, because that is tells everything. It's
Yeah.
not only about nature. It's not only about economics. It's about
Resilience as a risk management, as in
Yeah,
fact, an
like
adaptability possibility. That's what
I
we
was
need
curious if
resilience for.
what's your view to this?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think that's a key word that's the big advantage of nature-based solutions for flood protection. We are very technically oriented, and it also makes us very vulnerable because it's not very resilient for climate change. And I think nature-based solutions are a lot better in that than our technical solutions. So I totally agree that should be one of the key words.
Fiona, want to respond to this?
Yeah. I agree about resiliency, but actually I think that's a feature of security. And it's not just water security, it's environmental security, and that's security of economy. So resilience obviously is important, robustness is important, but security I think is what we're all aiming for. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now I want to thank you then for being on this panel, because we will go to the next speaker that will be sort of continuation. And the next speaker, where is Brechtje? Oh, there you are. Okay, so we're going marine now and coastal, right? And I don't know, maybe even oceanic, but maybe less extent. Brechtje, you're scientific director of Tijdens, and you're also a professor at Delft University, right? And you have a terrible pain in your back. That's why you can't sit. But unfortunately for you now, but you can stand to give your talk, and we'd love to hear your story. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking that Martin Luther King saying about if you cannot run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl, literally applies to me. But I'm here, so I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I wondered a bit who's my audience. So I want to know who is in policy. In execution, project implementation. Yeah, also nice. Yeah, we heard it. Heijmans also. Academia. Yeah, I expected that. A lot of people in academia. Yeah, maybe NGOs or not-for-profit also. Ah, nice. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm gonna now I know a bit of everything. Let's start. Okay, learning from the water domain. So why I'm here? I enjoyed the discussion because a lot was already mentioned and said. And I'm here actually because I'm an ecologist by training, but I work at the Delft University and I teach in the civil engineering department. I thought about going there for a while, I have to say, when I started out. But I feel sort of at home, and I teach students there how they work with natural processes. So I will show a little bit of my teaching here, but I integrate everything in the teaching. So I work a lot with civil engineers, but civil engineers build in the system. And this is also why I think if we want to do nature restoration and conservation in the Netherlands, we need to link to the water domain, because everything in nature, in my opinion, is linked to water. Water quality, water quantity, do we have enough, do we have too little, do we have too much sometimes? And water is regulated not by our Ministry of Nature or Environment. Water is regulated by the Ministry of Infrastructure mostly. So that is already a challenge that was mentioned here. We're like, these are separate entities. So how do we get water better in the nature restoration legislation? That's also a question. And what does water look like in the Netherlands, and how does this affect our ecosystems? So to give you a bit of a perspective, these little red lines in the picture, in the first picture, are all the sluices and weirs that we have in our rivers. And they influence where the water goes, where it flows to, so which river branch can get how much discharge. And this also influences how much water we have available for nature, of course. The other picture is the southwest of the Netherlands, and all these yellow flags are the system of storm surge barriers, sluices, dams that we've constructed there. So our entire water system is not natural if we talk about our coastal system. So the fresh water that's going there is humanly influenced. The salt water where it can flow is humanly influenced. So how can we restore nature in such an anthropogenically modified environment? That's a question that puzzles me. And that we think about a lot, because basically if we start to work with nature in these systems, you see all the time that nature is already disturbed by these large infrastructural works that we have. So everything that we do then becomes a bit like gardening, right? We do a lot of management in our water system for nature, actually to maintain the quality of our nature. And if we talk about the word resilience, this is not resilient. We don't create resilient nature this way. We don't create nature that is able to capture shocks and that is able to recover from shocks. So that's tricky. We already now need large investments to manage nature. We need to nourish sand in the Oosterschelde because some of the intertidal flats are disappearing. We don't have gradual transitions between land and water, the most valuable ecosystems that we have in our delta. We can do it, though. We made choices. This was already mentioned a lot. This is the LA River. You can discharge your water like this and modify your river like this. This is what engineers may like, because it gives a lot of control, you know, over things. We made a choice in the Netherlands in 1997 to do it differently. We were not raising our embankments then, but we made a choice, which it was mentioned before, room for the river. So we said we're not going to raise embankments to reduce flood risk, but we're going to actually widen the river or deepen the river in areas. But we're going to give it more space. So this is actually the large-scale vision, and there were a lot of tiny measures to actually achieve that vision. And now we have a Room for the River 2 program, and I think we will try to move towards the same concept again. So if you want to do something big, like making space for water, you need a sort of national vision, and then you need all these tiny measures to achieve that vision. And the interesting thing is that if we talk about nature-based solutions along the coast, everybody always mentions the sand engine, right? So nourishments of the sandy coast. But that's not our nature-based strategy along our coastline. We made a similar choice for a Dutch sandy coast. This is what the Japanese are currently doing in Japan. They want a tsunami-proof levee, and they're constructing this. But you have a choice. We could have done this in the Netherlands as well, but we choose to do it like this, actually. We made a choice in the 1990s. We said we have a basic coastline, and we want to keep it in place where it is, also under sea level rise. And then we do a lot of measures or interventions to achieve that large-scale objective, keeping our sandy coastline in place. And measures that we do are nourishments, which are not completely ecologically sound. Let's say there's negative effects of the mining of sand, there's negative effects of the nourishing. But because we do this already for long, we have really learned a lot. What is the success of this program is that we have developed these nourishment strategies over time. So we went from just dumping sand on the beach to dumping it underwater in the wave active zone, where the waves naturally bring it to the shore. And then we implemented the sand engine as a way the waves bring it to the shore, but we also used the cross-shore or the lateral transport. The lateral transport in the Netherlands is south to north. So the sand of the sand engine is moved to the shore, but it's also moved to the north. So that's why it's very south. So we benefit from this sand multiple times. This system is a really nice system with a lot of co-benefits. Real estate value, freshwater purification, recreation. So cool. But we do a lot of measures that all contribute to this larger objective. So to me, the nature-based solution here is actually using your beach and dune system for flood risk, for water purification. But what you need is, again, this larger system vision and small-scale implementation measures to achieve that vision. So we're in a crucial moment now for the nature restoration regulation in our coastal domain, because we can do this with the sandy coast. We have the room for the river for the rivers. We have the second room for the river program. But for our silty coastlines, we rely on levees, on dikes, and on dams. And there's different strategies you can do for your coastline, right? So again, we're under the Delta program, also under program Extreme Sea Level Rise in the Netherlands. We are discussing again, what should we do with our coastline? Should we advance the line? Should we retreat? Should we hold the line? And this decision that we'll make, this larger scale decision, will be instrumental for if we're going to meet our nature objectives, and how our coastline or what our coastline will look like in the future. We researched three visions. It was like protect, so hold the line, but then a lot of hard defense structures and levees. The other one was advance the line. You see it there. So engineers go crazy, like, oh, we make a big freshwater lake, we advance a line, we make a big dam there, we connect the UK with the Netherlands, you know. Well, and then we made a fourth vision, which was, and the other one was retreat, which is a bit of a negative story. That's not the positive story you want to hear, retreat. And retreat is economically not feasible for the Netherlands. So it means we will move out. It's managed realignment. We will just give up, sorry, moving too much. Okay, and we made another one. So the ministry in the Delta program asked us, can you make another vision for the Dutch case based on nature-based solutions? What will it look like? Well, for a sandy coast, we're kind of okay, you know, with the beach and dune system. But for the silty coast, we have this whole structure of dams. So we suggested a different working method to do this. And several elements that made other programs to success, we integrated these. So we said to do this, we're gonna not only look at flood risk, so we had a flood risk objective, we had a freshwater objective, but we want nature as a separate objective there. So we included it at the same level. That's really important. We work based from a really good system understanding. So that's your hydrological, your geological, your morphological, and your ecological understanding of how this coastal system of the Netherlands works. I think that is the basis for nature-based solutions. Otherwise, I get standalone solutions that do not contribute to the larger ecological system. I have some examples of that later, but where you even can question if they contribute to biodiversity. So you need to think this, to do this large-scale thinking, to come up with the right nature-based solutions, but also for your nature-based solutions to work, because they cannot work in a system that's really modified a lot, where there's no flows of sediment, where there's no flows of water, where there's no dynamics to bring sediment to the coast. So we set focus on restoring these large-scale processes to make nature-based measures work, at least. And we said there's 3 that are most important for nature. It's dynamics, connectivity, and it's creating space. So we now use these same concepts in all landscapes in the Netherlands, so also in the peat meadows, in the sand areas, in cities it applies a bit less. But we're thinking if we can work from these systems, from these sort of concepts for all landscapes. And we use back-end forecasting. So make a vision, what could it look like, actually also to motivate people. And then do backcasting, what do we need to do to achieve that vision? And we used forecasting to show what will happen to our coastal system in the future if we do nothing. If we just sit and we keep on going on we do the business as usual, let's say. So, our system understanding. In a nutshell, the ecosystem status of the Dutch coastal system with a focus on shallow and silty systems, a bit. What we really saw, and we knew this, right? But it's good to sort of start your story from there, we found. The polder practices that we've been doing in the Netherlands meant basically that we would advance the line always. We would put the levee where there used to be salt marshes, where there was higher land. So basically the space for salt marshes, for higher intertidal areas is taken in the Netherlands already. So if you want these back, it will be really difficult to do that outside of the levee in this area, in a lot of the areas. So we're talking about the Wadden Sea, the southwestern delta. Then for the southwestern delta, what is really important is due to all the dams and barriers, the system is not able to grow with sea level rise. I mean, some areas are freshwater lakes that used to be salt. They don't have a connection with the sea, no connection with the river, so no sediment input anymore. The Easterschelde, that has a storm surge barrier, has a little bit of sediment input, but it doesn't come really through the barrier. So you see that we are losing tidal flats in the Easterschelde as well. The Westerschelde, which is open, or the Eems-Dollard that are open, what do we do there? Massive dredging. So we do a lot of dredging there, by doing that we totally disturb the morphological balance of the system, which actually feedbacks and translate into ecology. Because we see in the Westerschelde, for example, we dredge, the system is out of equilibrium, the channel becomes too deep, so it starts transporting more water in and out. Then the intertidal flats are being raised, so we lose the dynamics of a natural intertidal flat that has this little shortcut areas on it, and that moves and actually has micro sort of variation that we now see completely disappearing in the intertidal areas. And what we see here when we do forecasting, if there's a lot of sea level rise in the Netherlands, we will completely lose intertidal areas. We did a bit, we had really high scenarios. We see that with lower scenarios, we will keep some intertidal areas longer, but what is crucial here is also the highest growth potential is in the high intertidal areas, so in the marshes, because they trap sediment faster than an intertidal flat. And that is exactly the habitat that we don't have, or that we have actually been empoldering in the Netherlands. So what we did then is we made a vision where we actually said, what we did first is we set a target. We said, okay, how much nature do we want to restore? That was the first thing that we found out. How much ecosystems do we have in our coastal areas? I mean, they're protected, it's all Bird and Habitat Directive protected, but it's not clear. We don't have the numbers of how much intertidal area we have. We don't have the numbers of how much salt marshes there are present. To us, it was a bit like it's difficult to know what you want to restore if you don't know what you have already, right? So we made targets where we basically used the PAGW, so the Large Water Program in the Netherlands, some of their objectives. We used the herstelopgaves that are still there, so the restoration that we still need to do. And then we added also something to it. And what we found out is then we start saying, okay, how can we achieve these targets? And we already found out that with very small measures, we cannot achieve the targets. So what you need to do, we need drastic measures to achieve the target. So we made this vision where we said we're just going to remove all dams, all weirs, all sluices. Can we then restore enough intertidal area in the Netherlands? So you have to think big. It's a bit, some people are a bit like, what are you doing? But it was an interesting thought exercise at least, because it shows that what will happen if we don't do this is we will lose it. If we start thinking big, we can actually meet the nature restoration legislation in the coastal zone. So there's either, it's not like, it's a bit binary, right? There's not a middle way. It's we meet it or we don't meet it. And if you want to meet it, you have to think big. With thinking small, you will not meet it. So the drastic measures are remove dams and barriers, reroute and reconnect rivers and water bodies, realign seawall and dikes, and depolder large areas. That is what is needed. So maybe looking a bit still, I see Louise standing, but I'm just going to do this.
We're missing one member.
Yeah, okay. How are we doing coastal restoration now? I have two big projects. One of 2019, which is the Waterdune in Zeeland. It's a very big restoration project. We actually had a sort of sluice in the main seawall to let water in with a reduced tide. And the other one is in the north of the Netherlands in the Wadden Sea, where we're doing something the same with a culvert. It was just opened last year in November. The first seawater came in. And we're now monitoring in these areas. And what you see is, first, if you don't restore the full tide, but you get a reduced tide, you get a very small gradient. So where the interesting biodiversity is, your gradient from low water to high water, we're not really restoring that. We also see that we focus a lot on creating breeding grounds for birds, but birds need food. If you have this small gradient, we can already say we don't find the same diversity of benthic species, bird food, in these areas as we find in natural areas. So we're restoring in a way that doesn't create the same habitat quality and biodiversity. Other coastal projects, well, I could have put in a sand engine, but this is also one. This is the Brede Groene Dijk, we call it, wide green levee. Look what we do. The land is to the left. I often hear there's no space in the Netherlands to widen the levees on the backside. Well, this is the no space situation along a lot of our levees also. This is like agricultural land. We don't want to go in this process with farmers to talk about it. The wide green levee is presented as a nature-based solution. We build the levee out in the marsh, into the Wadden Sea. We do again what we said we don't do anymore. We encroach into the sea again. So it's a bit about like, okay, we don't want to do the process around these projects to really do the solutions that we should do. All our restoration projects are focused on the area in front of the levee. But that is really not where we can do it. Okay, finalizing. I think we need a new narrative for nature. So we will not, with the current practices, we will definitely not meet it. I think we need a bold vision to ensure resilient coastal ecosystems where we don't manage all the time. And we need more space. We need more space for intertidal landscapes. And these intertidal landscapes will also help in flood risk reduction. They will also keep our levees robust and safe and more resilient on the long term. So they contribute to different objectives if we do it. But this is difficult. We need to start talking this space discussion. So if you talk about space, it's too difficult to solve it locally. That's also what the levee program, for example, is saying. They cannot talk locally with people about setting back a levee. I think the same as room for the river, we need a vision for the coast, room for intertidal areas, room for sea level rise, whatever you want to call it. It's too bad Ko is not here, but he knows my story, I think. So agreeing with the panel, inclusion of nature as one of the main objectives has proven successful, but try to raise it into the water domain at the same level. That's my mission. Focus on the large-scale governing conditions. I miss this I miss this often in nature legislation. There's large-scale conditions that we need to keep ecosystems resilient and future-proof, especially under climate change. To buffer against ecosystem dynamics, I said, and to anticipate future losses, we need to increase the claim of space even. So we cannot say, this is the amount of nature we need now. Because nature is dynamic, we're going to lose habitat also, right? Especially in the coast. We want pioneer zones, but pioneer zones eat away intertidal flats or old marsh. I want these dynamics back. And therefore, we cannot give like a lowest offer to policy. We cannot do that. We need extra space. We need additional space for ecosystems to transfer from one system to another. In the levee world, they never built a levee on exact the right height. They also increase the height. They have over height. We need over ecosystem area. Also, to combat losses in the future for climate change, right? We will lose intertidal systems with sea level rise. So if we meet the objective now, we will not meet it in 10 years. So we need to meet it twice now. To do that well, I think it starts with better bookkeeping, and the answer, no, I think for the whole panel discussion is we need to make nature important again.
Thank you very much. Hold on, Brechtje. We're going to have some questions from the audience. Stay here. Yeah, now you understand why I'm such a fan of Brechtje. The dynamics, I think that's lacking everywhere. So we need more concern about that we allow things again to happen, that we don't control completely, and we do things, we learn from it, we do things better. And that's exactly what we need to do. How dairy is that at the policy level? I think very much, but I think it's greatly needed. Question from the audience. Yeah, of course, Bram. Here. So. PBL.
Bram Brechtman from PBL, the Environmental Assessment Agency. Thank you for your very good and I think inspiring presentation, really. I found a remarkable thing you said. I said a retreat is a negative thing. I would like to challenge that, because it might be a solution for some of the things you say here.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a nice remark. And I think your challenge is kind of right. I saw this, there was like a sort of inventory, I think once, from Quest or Kennislink or something. And they asked people, what do you think the Netherlands should do? And it was like a huge bar on retreat. So I think it can be discussed, but I notice in policy it's perceived very difficult. Well, we have Jim here from Zeeland.
We'll talk about it.
It's a bit a forbidden word in certain areas, depoldering.
Yeah. So does everybody know what retreat really means?
Yeah.
The water people say yes, of course.
Yeah, putting your levee back or manage realignment. But I agree. So there's a lot
space for the sea to come in, which we don't like, because we got the land from the sea, and now you're going to give it back? No way. Good food or agriculture or whatever. Yeah. Very, very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can do something with words there too. Don't use the word give up land. It's like transferring land. I hear people often say give up land. Yeah, but it's transfer it to different function.
Nature development law.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. Good. Another question. This lady there.
Hi, Isevani. With the polarized Isevani from, I work with biodiversity restoration, but now work in Science for Policy in a startup, EASAC, working with the Doggerland, Stichting Doggerland and Embassy of the North Sea. How does restoration of, say, undersea biodiversity assist in this? And another question regarding the policy, because my area is Science for Policy. Polarization, I mean, in terms of science policy, has played a large role. But citizen science, and in the previous one they talked about Netherlands as a living lab. How are you including citizen science organization and other communities, the private sector, in the process within Deltares?
For your first question, if I understand it well, how it translates to oceans, I would say there's also an element where we always beat around the bush, which is for restoration in oceans, we need to stop fisheries. And especially the bottom trawling. So, I think the Netherlands even bottom trawls in their marine protected areas. So this translates to the ocean like that for me. Large scale conditions, stop disturbance from anthropogenic activities if you want to have nature restoration in the ocean. Your other question, how do we, these visions for the Netherlands were all made in a combination with private, public, science, research, and so we do engage. We collaborate in a lot of programs, also in the NL 2120 program that Tim already pitched, but we have all parties in there.
Okay, that's not citizen science, of course, but
no.
If you're talking about the collaboration of, just anybody that can help you, maybe to do some of the bookkeeping and get the measures out, that may be a possibility, right? Stichting Noordzee. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna thank you now for this, and we're going to the panel. And it's very, very unfortunate that Ko Verdaas, who was the Delta Program Commissioner of the Dutch government and who is also a professor at Delft, he phoned me yesterday that he was really ill and he couldn't come. But we have two other people, very interesting people on here. And the first one is Jim van Belzen, that I want to ask you to come up here. He is an estuarine ecologist at the NEOS. Yes. And I think you... have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. So he's the doer and the scientist. And he is monitoring, he's working in practice. And you're also doing a lot on television and things about and with your children, a beautiful video, etc. So he's all round, and that's good for a panel. And the second one, of course, is Janne-Marie de Jonge, who is the ambassador of the Collective Nature Inclusive, which is financed by the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, what else? Nature is at the end. Food security, which I think is crazy, and nature at the end. And anyway, so that is I know you will tell me all about it, us all about it, a whole coalition of all sectors of society that can help to recover biodiversity. So without Ko, we're going to do this. And well, first of all, here are the questions, of course, that a lot of the questions possibly later on for you about this transition in Zeeland. That's where you are. You're working in EASAC. And you told me that indeed it's one of the most difficult things is this how you say that, this language, this talking about, giving space for the sea instead of, using the land for what we're used to. Tell me about it. What's the challenge?
So I think I can spend the whole...
I know.
So I have to be short, but I think it's a combination of things. So of course, everybody in Zeeland is always aware about the big 1953 storm surge that wreaked havoc and killed almost 2,000 people. And that's always sort of underneath all these discussions. But to be honest, it's also a little bit of a narrative that we made with each other to keep things as they are now. And the other thing is that a lot of people talk mostly about the how do you say that? The technical wonders that we made in Zeeland to make us safe, but they don't talk about the ecological disaster of it. And I think that's a problem. And I'm also, when I was young, I was also like really enthusiastic. I saw the opening of the storm surge barrier in the Eastern Scheldt on the television. Everybody was sitting on the couch and watching it, and we were very proud that we built that. And then about 20 years later, I learned about all the issues with the sand nourishments that are needed to restore nature and stuff like that. And I know that, but most of my family doesn't know that. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to talk about more openly about, and that also will help changing that narrative and also changing the way how people look at these kind of interventions.
Yeah, indeed. And you're very good at talking about also when you do restoration that you cannot expect that, you know, within a year or 2 years or something like that, we see this lovely nature again. Then
it takes time.
It takes time, right? And tell me about the excursion that you did to take people to the soil to show that the bedding organisms.
Yes. So actually, it was I think a week after the Delta Congress last year. Just the meegroei, the growth with sea level rise report was published, and we went to a salt marsh in the Eastern Scheldt that has issues with the sand hunger. So there is not enough tidal energy anymore in the Eastern Scheldt to build up tidal flats and the salt marsh. And we are preparing interventions to see what we can do, for example, to save the salt marsh. But we also thought, well, maybe we need to invite the local neighbors that live around that area to bring them to the marsh to experience what is there. And actually, they live some live 50 meters from the marsh, some live 500 or a kilometer from the marsh, and they never been there. And they actually didn't know about the sand hunger. And they also didn't know about that salt marsh was retreating. Of course, they sometimes walked on the dike and they saw that it was due to the changing through the decades and becoming a little bit less, but they thought it's because the dams are closing off the rivers, right? And I think that's also one of the other things that we are doing maybe not so good, is we talk about the delta works, about the Dutch delta, but actually we are an estuarine environment. That means that we import sediment mostly from the coast and not from the river. And people think that because we closed off the dams at the river, that is the issue. And they don't make the link with the Eastern Scheldt storm surge barrier, where actually the sand is coming from.
Yeah, yeah.
So these kind of things we need to do. We need to do that better, I think, because then people start understanding how the system works and how for example, opening up the Eastern Scheldt storm surge barrier might be a solution for this issue instead of opening up the dams in the back of the estuary.
So I see maybe an entrance already to you, Jan-Marie. It's our relation to nature. It's how we relate to nature. It's what we know about it. And so for those people, it's very clear. This is where we were. We had lovely land, and now we've given it back to the sea. My goodness, why? It's very negative. How about your story, let's say, that you say, well, you know, everybody in each sector of society actually plays a role in biodiversity recovery, and that you started, or you now are the ambassador of the collective nature inclusive.
Yeah. I hear a lot about we need a new story for nature. And I think that I'm a landscape architect. And in landscape, we humans are included. Because the landscape is the way we as humans treat our natural system. So a landscape for me is human included. But the funny thing is that when we talk about nature, most people think nature is something without people, and people always do harm to nature. And I think if we keep telling ourselves that we harm nature, that we won't have this new story. And if we then say we give back land back to nature, then people interpret that as
loss.
We people are not involved, so we lose something. But if we change the story to a nature-inclusive society, which is also a human-inclusive nature, which is the same, then we do not give land back, but we gain a lot by having multifunctional land use, including nature. And including nature means that we bring back this healthy, natural system. So I really think that what you also told us, that knowing the system, the natural system, including how we can use it in a regenerative way, and seeing ourselves as a positive force in these processes, like it was, well, of course, not always, but 150 years ago, areas that we now consider as nature reserves, like the heather fields, and that was part of the agricultural system. It was all integrated. And I think the challenge is to discover again how we can influence biodiversity in a positive way by acting nature positive. And the collective, well, we call it nature inclusive, which is a bit difficult term for me. But it's about, well, nature positivity, regeneration, etc. Being part of healthy natural systems and processes. And we work as a collective with governments and private sector and a non-governmental organization and a lot of civil society, grassroots initiatives. And I think also this diversity in organizations is very important, because just like biodiversity, we all have our specific niches and strength. And it's not about power, but it's about who can do what in the best way. So the market, like we heard from Heijmans, they are very good in innovation, in a creative competition. So that requires that the government gives room to these private sector to innovate and to challenge them to innovate. And that is just important as limiting the market parties that are not so ambitious. So it's always both sides. And I think also grassroots organizations and also science, by the way, they are capable of bringing new stories into the world. Like, well, we have seen what WWF did in the also helping Room for the River 1.0, but we need you for 2.0 because that's not yet in the pocket. I'm in the advisory board, so be careful.
So if we always we always see the water knowledge of the Netherlands is something that we export and that we're very well known for, and everybody thinks that every Dutch person puts his finger in the dike or has some affinity to that. Is it possible for to have our nature-based solutions, not only with the water, but in fact for everything, as at the forefront of our export model that Holland is known for. Do you see that chance? You know what I mean? When so that you say, well, if we produce in a sustainable way our food, if we actually enhance our biodiversity, if we can still, also play with the water, not only by keeping the sea out, but aren't we an example for every metropole in the world? I often say the Netherlands is a metropole, actually, with its...
Yeah, I also think we need a different story there. I think the Netherlands is good at trading. We've always been. And we are also preachers. But it is not only about preaching and trading. It's also about your connection to nature. And I think if we need one thing, and some people in the audience also mentioned that earlier, is that we lost nature connectedness. And we focus a lot on the functional values of nature, nature-based solutions. It's a solution for us people. Yeah. But the beautiful thing about nature connectedness is that it was just in a report a couple of weeks ago, a big international survey, that people who are more nature connected, that they feel more resilient and they prove to be more adaptive in their behavior. So if we are talking about resilience, especially in this time, with all the turmoil around us, then we need nature connectedness. And why is it? Because when you're nature connected, then you feel part of a bigger whole. And then you feel that you are dependent on your surroundings. So it's about mutual dependency. But it also gives you hope that you can influence the system around. So I think the relational value of nature should be much and much more.
We have to work on that.
Yeah, stressed. And maybe that can also be part of, you're nodding. I'm very good. Yeah. Very good. So the relational value should be, I think,
and that's
on top.
Making nature, so make the first, I'm making nature part of everything with the 10 categories.
And maybe we shouldn't use the word nature. Even I love the word nature, of course, because I feel I am nature. But if we change it in the word life, we're all part of life. And my DNA is only for 50% my own DNA. The other 50% is
your microbes,
different life in my body. So if we realize that, and if every child realizes that, and that's why in the collective nature inclusive, we do not only work with water and agriculture and the building environment, but also with education, with the health sector, with the financial sector. So it should be really
point taken.
Well,
I think.
Can I respond to that? Because I of course I do agree on this, but I also think that there is not just one silver bullet in this, and I think it's also, for example, how we frame technology versus nature, and actually I don't agree on that part as well. So technology, I think, is much more using our science to do all kinds of things. And we often talk we talk about coastal protection with the dikes, but nature is just as part of the dike is also technology, right? So it's using the practical knowledge is in technology. So some people will resonate much more with that storyline, I think, that we just use nature as part of our technological development, and in that way it might also be something that we can transfer to other countries or make money off or stuff like that.
It is also involved when you say doing things, learning from it and doing it again. That is science basically also. Because
maybe
you have to try things and learn from that, and then being able to take the improvement of what you've learned to go on.
But science is broader than research. Research that also has the word research, like the past is always better. And I think the nice thing you do, and also Tim does, is working together with designers. And of course, I know I'm a landscape architect, so I'm preaching for my own discipline. But if we cannot only, well, let's put it this way. I think nature is too important to be left to ecologists or to the Department of Nature.
Only. Ecologists only.
Yeah. So we really have to broaden the scope and also work like nature does. What you say.
Yeah,
it is experiencing, it's learning, it's reflecting.
But it's very important to also for agricultural discussions that we're having. We're not going back to in history. You know, we're actually using satellites, we're using robots, we're using all kinds of technological greatness that our brain can do. But there's nothing wrong with that. But nature is your. Ecologists study how nature works and then learn from that to apply it to an agro-ecosystem. And agronomists have a very limited vision on an agronomical on a system that they use in agriculture, forgetting about the rest of nature, and that's where it goes wrong. So I agree with you also. We have the technology, but you do it with nature as your friend, as your environment. And if I say nature as a friend, I'm already out of nature, but that's not true. I'm part of it.
And nature as an ally, also as an ally. In our own challenges. And I agreed, that I think Bram said it, that also the word restoration has the connotation of also the word restoration. Like you go back. You do not restore the nature that was there in 1900. No, we restore the healthy natural system, the conditions. So the landscape will be different. And the landscape will also contain a lot of technical, very smart solutions. We need these smart solutions, but in the right balance. And one of my predecessors as a state advisor, Dirk Simons, often uses the word, the Netherlands is one big, is it prothesis? The way we live in this low-lying country. But my answer is, oh yes, but a prosthesis is only useful if you have an artificial hand or something. It's only useful if the rest of your body is healthy. So first make the body as a whole healthy, and then you can add prosthesis.
Okay. Good. Thanks very much for this panel. But now we're going to go to some questions, although we have very little time again. Who's got a question? It could be in a broader scope. Something you really here. So one question here.
Oh, hello, I'm Geoffrey. I saw these wonderful people, and I wanted to all of you become minister presidents for the Netherlands. That would be so great. But my question is actually that, the more diverse nature is, the better it is. How can we make these meetings more diverse? What are your ideas on that?
Yeah, well, maybe we can also diversify in culture, if that's what you mean. I think Louise already did a good job by not only inviting white males 50 plus. Well done. But I'm also part of the Zoonomic Society. I'm a speaker of the living, and we often try to think like parts of nature. And I think when we include that in education, for example, that this can be the chair for nature, or for the zandhagedis or whatever. And then, try to think like parts of nature. Yeah. That's also culture. Yeah.
This was a science for policy meeting, but I invited a lot of other parties, the private and everything that we asked for. So culturally, it's always difficult. That's for sure. Another question then. Another question. Andy, here from the EASAC.
Hi, Andy Watson I'm on the ESP panel. So I'm interested by, how do you define nature? If you are saying, I have to, as you say, I think a lot of people think of nature as whatever is not human, what used to be back 2,000 years ago. Well, we're not going back there. Europe is a largely human-made environment these days. So how do you define nature? Is it biodiversity? Is it, do you say biodiversity by itself is a good thing, it's a good, so we'll try and increase that? How do you do it?
Both an answer. Tim first?
You
first, Jim.
I think this is like the $1 million question, right? So how do you do it? But I think important is that you try to at least have natural processes like at the foundation of your society or your ecosystem. Basically, we're all part of the ecosystem, right? And we replaced parts of that by all kinds of technical. How do you say that? Technical equipment, buildings, infrastructure. But basically, nature is like also a vital infrastructure, and that there are all kinds of basic processes like. Bertje already said, like the water is like one of the most essential parts of it. Dynamics, sediment transport. So these kind of things need to be intact, and then from that you get a living system. So maybe you have to define what are the essential conditions for life to thrive, and that you should focus on, and not so much on how many species will be there. I think in the end they will come if you make sure that these processes are working again. Does it give an answer to what you... So,
yeah. For me,
it is $1 million question.
Biodiversity is an important characteristic of nature. However, nature is a lot bigger than that. And to make it easy for myself, I think nature is everything that's not man-made. And I am not man-made, although my parents did something together. But I'm not man-made. So it's about life.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop here. But we have lunch and you can meet one another, that's for sure. But I do want I want to thank you, and unfortunately Ko couldn't come, but thank you for this panel, and we go to the next speaker. Now, something we haven't really talked about a lot is, we talked about the economy, we talked about ecology. We haven't really talked about much about the social aspects of it. Well, I still see there's a lot of connection, and somebody that can really, hopefully, make the connection very well is Professor Simone Gingrich. And I think, well, She's associate professor in social ecology at Boku University Vienna, and I hope you will give a sort of a final statement on nature-based solutions, integrated approach for ecological, economic, socio-synergies, because basically you connect everything to everything else, but to you the floor.
Thank you, Louise. So I interpreted the invitation as a way to reflect on this morning, and so I didn't bring a prefabricated statement, but instead I took a lot of notes this morning, and I learned a lot from you. So both on the Netherlands, I'm from Austria, a landlocked country, so the marine situation was really interesting, and also about the practical challenges of implementing the nature restoration regulation or work around it. So I would like to reflect on this very intensive and productive morning along three rather general observations. The first one being that the nature restoration regulation, the commentary that was presented by Thomas in the morning, and also the very diverse contributions towards implementing it, all of us struggle with or aim towards acknowledging connections. This was very visible in the last panel also. So the first one is the connections between people and nature, we just heard, but also in the commentary there is a very strong statement towards acknowledging that economic activity relies on functioning ecosystems. We heard that security relies on healthy nature. We heard that nature or biosphere integrity is the foundation of civilization. Yeah, those types of connections, that's central for the nature restoration regulation, I guess. We heard about other connections, for example, between ecosystems. So what happens upstream affects the coastal areas. What happens in agriculture, land management affects riverine ecosystems. And we heard about connections between different people or social institutions, different types of actors. We saw in the beginning how diverse the group of people is in this room. I think this is fantastic. Congratulations, Louise, on getting this different representation of different types of organizations. I do see also more diversity could still be achieved. Nevertheless, more diverse than many of the groups I often work in as a researcher. So these connections between different social groups is a very important element, I think, in bringing the nature restoration regulation into being. We also heard about challenges of policy being done in silos, so policy cohesion is an important challenge that needs to be overcome. Also, we heard about the challenges of people who pay for restoration versus those who have the benefits. So, getting this, these different perspectives and different actors is an important task. Two more connections I want to point out that were not in, so much in the forefront. One also connected to my own research interests. We saw also that there are important connections between the past and the future connected to nature restoration. So we saw that landscapes today are the product of decisions or practices conducted in the last decades or even centuries. We also heard about the need for, I need to find it, preventive restoration, so forward-looking restoration, the need for prioritizing long-term goals over short-term benefits. So this maybe being part of life, being part of a larger process, and also multiple temporalities, this connection of past and future, I think, is something very at the heart of the nature restoration challenge. And then lastly, also something only addressed slightly, but it did come up, the connections between production and consumption, or nature restoration, and then how like those not involved in nature restoration or in agriculture or fisheries or landscape planning, how those behaviors or practices might need to change. So we did touch upon, for example, the requirement for changes in diets in order to free land for nature restoration. So these challenges, I think, or these connections between production and consumption, they also play an important role for implementing the nature restoration. It was my first observation. It's also the longest on connections. The other two will be shorter. So the second one is that productively addressing these connections and bringing nature restoration to the ground is challenging. So we did hear a bit about the challenges that are at hand. Also, I alluded to some of them. Me coming from Austria, where even the signing of the nature restoration regulation was very conflictuous, if you remember. This is it is a controversial topic, and currently also the political the environmental agenda is facing political backlash in many contexts. At the EU level, in many national contexts. So there are conflicting interests. There are some unpopular targets. I heard the word drastic visions. Yeah. So there are challenges to address. There are conflicting interests to overcome. And to this end, this brings me already to my third general observation. I do agree with many of you this morning who stressed that the nature restoration regulation or its implementation really offers opportunities for co-benefits, synergies. We heard win-win-win situations. We heard stories of hope. Yeah, so I think in order to overcome the conflicting interests or the challenges that we heard about, it's really important, and we saw many steps and proposals in these directions to focus both in practice and in the narratives that we share on these co-benefits, on the synergies that can be generated through nature restoration. And just to give some examples, you've heard it this morning, so there are co-benefits between biodiversity, climate change mitigation, for example, when allowing trees or woody vegetation to come up in areas for flood protection, for example. Or restoring peatlands, for example. Also, climate change adaptation can have important co-benefits with biodiversity conservation in terms of, for example, wetland restoration. Also, natural hazards control we heard about. And then we heard also about recreation co-benefits. But also more generally human health and well-being co-benefits that can be achieved through nature restoration, and focusing on these and also capitalizing on these, making use of such co-benefits in the practical implementation. I think this has been demonstrated today that these are really productive ways forward also for overcoming potential conflicts or challenges. I was speaking now mostly about sort of material or physical co-benefits of nature restoration. We also heard about the more social or possibly even psychological co-benefits of nature restoration. The first speaker this morning, Leonie, you were in the, or not the first speaker, the first panel contribution, spoke about the positive impact that the engagement with nature restoration had on her own gardening activities, right? So this connectedness, ecological connectedness is, I think, a really positive effect that engagement with nature can have. And also, we did hear quite a bit about economic co-benefits of nature restoration that have been quantified, and I think a factor of 1 to 12 if investments are made towards nature restoration, 12-time benefits will be returned. And then what we also heard a bit about today is that the overcoming potential conflicting interests or working towards, particularly at the local level, working towards nature restoration and collaborating across different social groups also can enhance well, not only collaboration, but also social cohesion and sort of contribute to social flourishing in a way even beyond the specific ecosystem context. So those were my three observations. Nature restoration is about connections. Implementing those or addressing those is challenging, but there are co-benefits to be achieved. And just to close, I would like to stress that we saw today, and I think it's really important to be aware at this, of this as we go. There are contributions that can be made at multiple levels, both in time and space. So we spoke about the large visions for the next 100 years, but we also spoke about very concrete, specific things that people do. And I think at all of these levels, contributions are important, and and engagement can be seen to fit together, and also all of these levels are important to contribute to the transformative change that is required. And Louise hasn't stood up, but I guess my time may be up. So I'll hand over back to you for your final closing words,
well, no? No, thank you very much. Yeah, my closing words is to raise the bar of ambition really, really high. It can always fall down a little bit, but it never goes up by itself. So the ambition has to be very clear. Where's Leonie? Oh, she's gone. Oh. Okay. So, well, I'll talk to her afterwards. So that will be good. But so I thank you very much for your final words, because I'm not going to repeat it. I've seen a lot of things that I could talk about, but I won't. But I do something else. I've written a poem, and I thought I'll give you that alongside. I've written it a while ago, but I hope it makes sense. It's called Hope. No, that makes sense. A non-issue to most, or a mild concern. To us, the mere facts of food that prints, a climate that returns our indifferent interference with sturdy storms and warmer tears. A mission felt so strong and strange to dim the lightness of our existence, urging the crowd to lessen and listen to Mother Earth. No longer crying wolf, but crying for help, and with her the forests and the emptying seas. Is it a dream, sustainable growth and living from the sun and not the fossil earth? Economy embracing ecology, that all creatures small and beautiful will rejoice. Where climate changes at rates of thousands, not generations. One planet for all to stay, to share and perpetuate life as it should be. Let there be light soon, the right light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you. And the last remarks are obviously for everybody from the Academy and from EASAC that worked so well to have this meeting. It was kind of challenge, let's bring it to Amsterdam. It's a good timing. We're going to do this. We have to invite everybody. And what do we want to achieve? Positivism. Now, so that's what I hope happened. And now we're going to run, because we have 2 days of meetings. We're going to run to the lunch, and Amber is going to give all the panel members and the speakers a little present, and some of them are no longer here maybe, but I want to thank them as well, because it was a lot of preparation, and also you, Simone, to be making the notes and doing this. But I think it gave a good view of what EASAC is doing. It also gave a good view on what the Academy is really doing with more general public and these events, because I think they're very important. And I want to thank you all that you came after this beautiful day yesterday, at such an early time to the academy. So I wish you all a pleasant rest of the day. Yeah.